What's up, everybody? It's me, E-Man. Listen, as you know, another season of From is on the way, but I know some time has gone by. You know, maybe you forgot a couple things, and maybe you need a refresher, so have no fear, I've got you covered. We start off with Sheriff Boyd ringing the bell throughout town. Restaurants are closing and everyone in town is walking home. Before locking up, we see the townsfolk adjusting some sort of talisman hanging on their wall. As the sheriff ensures everyone is home safe, there's a sign posted saying that there's been 96 days without incident. Frank is passed out on the floor at the local bar. The bartender closes up shop, locks up, and fixes the talisman by the door. Frank's wife and daughter look out for him, but there's no sign of Frank's return. His daughter, Megan, prays before bed until she hears a knocking at the window. A strange old woman is outside of the bedroom window, and it sounds like her grandma, but it sure doesn't look like grandma.
She's not your grandma.
I'm so lonely.
Despite her mother pleading with Megan not to open the window, Megan decided to open the window anyway and realizes really quickly that wasn't her damn grandma. Woo! Now that is how you kick off a show. I don't know about y'all, but I was sitting there like, Megan, why'd you do that? Now, you know good and well that was not your grandma. And your mama told you not to open the window. And I'm sure, being in this town, you should have known better at this point. Frank wakes up from his drunken stupor to find his family murdered. Boyd shows Frank the mutilated bodies of his wife and daughter. He tells the deputy to lock Frank up. Julie is telling her little brother Ethan a story in the RV. His mother assures him that monsters aren't real. Suddenly, the family comes across a fallen tree in the middle of the road. As they try to get back to the highway, they notice that they don't have any cell reception and they're also lost. They drive into a small town and notice some of the cars have flat tires. Earlier, the sheriff meets up with Donna and she reminds him of their agreement. He said that he just wanted to see his son Ellis. He gets around to meeting Ellis and the tensions are thick. The sheriff informed him that the death that happened earlier is going to be followed up with the service, and he'd love for Ellis to come and pay his respects. Now, during the service, the townspeople notice the RV, and they're kind of surprised at the new arrivals. The sheriff tells everyone to remember what it was like when they all first arrived, and everybody ignored Jim. The sheriff gives him some directions to the highway to help him get back on his way. However, the more they drove, the more they noticed that they kept on ending back right in the town. Another car heads towards them and the RV swerves off the road. Everyone in the RV appears to be injured and Ethan especially has a large object going through his leg. The other driver in the other car gets out and informs Sheriff Boyd about the accident. In the back seat of the car, another person crawls out. The sheriff handcuffs him to the car and the townspeople come to the site of the accident to help everyone out. Sheriff Boyd wants Christy to help Ethan out by sewing his leg up. With only 40 minutes of daylight left, he pulls out the talisman. All right, now Donna did talk to Sheriff Boyd and talked about an agreement that they had. So we're going to get to that a little bit later in the series. So don't worry, that is going to be answered what that agreement actually is. Now we do go and we finally meet the Matthews family and we saw them driving around and around and around. And of course, you know, they get into the town and Boyd is like, yo, let them keep going. And we saw that Sarah basically was like, look, like that's kind of cruel and messed up to have them just keep going in this loop like that. But when you kind of think about what's going on, because I agreed with Sarah at first, like it is kind of bogus. Like, why would you keep sending them off? But when you think about the crazy stuff that's happening, right? And you think about like what happens at night in this town, it's actually not a bad idea to have people just drive around because the thing is, you want them to get a taste of how the situation that they're in is extraordinary, right? You want them to realize like, look, this is not normal. This is not something that we're going to see as making any type of sense to keep driving. And then all of a sudden you're in this, you know, type of loop. Upon further evaluation, I'm thinking like, you know what? This is actually not a bad idea to warm people up to basically the weird stuff that's about to happen in this town. So this is actually a nice way to initiate them into the madness. Because think of the alternative. If somebody just stopped and was like, hey, you need to get out your car because like monsters coming out at night, you gonna ignore them and think that they're crazy and keep on going. So I'm not mad at this tactic. All right, let's get back to the episode. Sarah is taking care of Toby. He wakes up to see her and wonders what happened. She kisses him and tells him it's not his fault. then shanks him in the neck. It's getting dark. The sheriff has the talisman and starts to prep the RV to keep it safe. The townspeople start to drive back, but they mistakenly go over the tire spikes that they laid out earlier on the road. As night falls and Jim and Christy try to attend to Ethan's injury, the sheriff can see the weird, creepy powder people slowly surrounding the RV. Oh my God. Okay, like what the hell is wrong with Sarah? Like Sarah's clearly nuts. She just sat here and like stabbed Toby as if it was nothing. This is not like none of this makes sense, right? And I mean, she had to like stab him in the mouth. Like, golly, that was just gruesome. Now, one thing to also think about, Ethan started having a seizure right when the creepy monster people started to walk out. Coincidence? I don't know. Anyway, that was it for episode 1. Like I said, I thought this was a great start to this season, just to really get you interested, to get you hooked. So I am definitely down for that. Now, there are a couple clues. Now, this is the part of the series where I'm going to say there are certain clues in here that I want you to just think about, let it marinate, and maybe take these clues later into the series. So these are some key things that I want you to remember. These are the clues, right? Now, the first clue that we have is we have the radio that just so happened to start playing on its own by itself. Why? No one knows. But the radio playing on its own, that is a big clue, I think. Again, we're going to have to figure out how it fits into all of this, but it is something we need to pay attention to. Second thing I want you to think about, when Toby and Jade were coming into town, right? His car was swerving. He wasn't just running a straight line. He was swerving. Was Toby intoxicated? Was he under the influence? What was up with Toby's car that he was like swerving like that caused him to also, run the RV off road? I do think that there are some answers to everything if we can maybe figure out what was going on with Toby as, what brought him in. Did he see the fallen tree too? Who knows? I don't know. Right? But like that is something I think we do need to pay attention to. Third clue. Why does everybody have a talisman in their house? What do these talismans do? What is the point of them? Obviously, that is going to be an ongoing thing that we need to keep in mind as well. Another clue to think about. Whatever these monsters are, apparently they only eat the insides of people and that's it. Like they leave the bones and everything else. So why is that? What's so interesting about the inside of people and not the rest of their bodies? Again, something to keep in mind. And then last but not least, we have the fallen tree. And then all of a sudden there are these crows. And even in the show, they told you, what are the flock of crows called? They're called a murder. So what does this mean? Is there some type of symbolism going on? Who knows? But again, this is going to have to be something that we have to keep in mind moving forward. Ethan's seizure has stopped. There's a knock at the RV door. Jim tries to open it, but the sheriff stops him immediately. The other town people are still running back to get inside until one of them trips and bumps their head. They arrive at the colony house and they see some of the monster people coming around the corner. The people in the house don't want to let the others inside. The creepers, they start to talk to Julie and the deputy immediately shoots them. Donna allows the people to come inside and tells them to get on their knees according to protocol. Julie and her mom are now getting tied up. Oh my God. Talk about a close call. To have the monsters get that close to Julie like that? Woo! No. And look at that. She doesn't know what they do, right? We saw in the first episode what happened, but she doesn't know. That was crazy. And then to have Kenny go and shoot them and nothing happens? Nothing? That right there is exactly what raises the fear factor level when it comes to whatever these creatures are. I don't know if they ghosts. I don't know if they monsters. Whatever they are, the fact that you can't even shoot them, you can't harm them, you can't deter them at all, that's creepy. And on top of that, they was just sitting there walking. They could have at any time just grabbed them or turned into monsters or whatever they did. They could have done any of that, but they was just like, nah, we just, hello there. Don't you remember me? That's all. Ooh, no. But that is exactly what makes this show so great, at least so far. The fact that these creatures, I think, are way scarier than we think. Donna brings Tabitha in a room to tell her about the craziness of this town. Meanwhile, in the kitchen downstairs, Julie is still tied up. Victor comes down to get some peaches, and his weird self makes Julie very uncomfortable. Luckily, Fatima comes in and shoos Victor away. She brings Julie upstairs to show her some of Ellis's artwork. She says that the things out there will try to trick people and get inside your head. Now, let me just say, this is one of the reasons why I absolutely love Donna's character. She is a straight shooter, straight talker. She gonna tell you exactly what it is. She's like, look, there's monsters out there. They eating folks. They killing people. Is that crazy to you? Guess what? It's crazy to me too. And, look, this is just where we are. Oh, and as for Victor, listen, I don't know if he's on the spectrum, but he is weird as ever. I don't need Victor to be around no type of kids, okay? Talking about you want some peaches. Bruh, take your butt to your room. Sheriff Boyd explains that they don't know what those creepers are outside and that the talisman apparently protects anyone that's inside a house or an enclosed space. Those creepers are still trying to get inside and start climbing on top of the RV. Christy and Jim manage to pull out the object in Ethan's leg. We learn later that Christy was a third-year medical student and Jim was an engineer who built theme parks. Ethan wakes up and says that he saw all types of drawings on the wall, including the Lake of Tears. Man, look, I don't know about Boyd, but I'm like, at this point, where y'all are at in this RV with them creepers outside, you and Jim just need to have a conversation. Like, y'all just straight up, monsters are outside. They eat and kill people. We don't know why. We don't know how. I guarantee you, it is a fact. I know it sounds crazy. Sit your tail down. Don't touch the talisman. Don't ask no more questions. That's it. Back in town, Sarah is talking to herself, saying she can't do anymore. After deliberating with whatever voices are in her head, she finally decides to cut up Toby's body, starting with his tongue. Now, I know I've asked this before, but what the hell is wrong with Sarah? Like, clearly something is wrong. I mean, listen, I don't get it. She's over here talking and arguing with voices in her head. Clearly something is not right. She got a screw loose or whatever. Now, for those of you that have already binged and you've already seen what happens in this season, stay tuned. I have a loose little theory about Sarah. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But for any of y'all that are new, for now, all you need to know, Sarah is nuts. That's all. Let's continue. Donna told Tabitha everything. She said that her and her sister were on a hunting trip until they saw the tree in the road and all the crows flying about. Her sister was killed in the streets by the monsters. Donna ran and hid during that time. That's just how people survived back then. She said the creepers would hunt people down just for fun. And she's been there for 3 years, 6 months, and 17 days. Kenny is struggling with his dad's declining health. Meanwhile, the nurse who is taking care of his father helps him go to bed. She goes to check on Toby, but then she sees that his body is completely mutilated and turns around and the door is wide open with the creeper standing right there. Oh my God. That was terrifying. Okay. To be in this large space where you think everything is cool, then you see a dead body, and then all of a sudden them creepers are right there at the door just looking at you smiling, and then they just walk in like it's nothing. Yo, all I know is at that point, I would have busted through a window or something. I don't know. I don't know what else to do, but I would just say that scene right there was absolutely terrifying. Christy sees Jim touching the talisman and the creeper busts right through the window to kill everyone. Thankfully, it was all a dream. It's now morning and they can safely exit the RV. Father Khatri drives Julie and Tabitha back to the RV to reunite with the family. Okay, look, let me tell you something. This show did not have to throw that jump scare in there. I'm just saying y'all didn't have to do that because it got me. I did jump. I didn't like it. Y'all bogus for that one. I just wanted to make sure I made that known. That was a bogus little jump scare. Sarah is sitting with her brother and tells him the story of the girl in a room with broken glass shards. She says that she hears their voices and that they told her to make Toby's death seem like the monsters did it and to leave the door open for them. Kenny arrives at the medical area to find the talisman fallen and his father's body completely mutilated. All right, so Sarah is still nuts, right? But the story that she told about the girl in the glass shards, I think that, it translates to the show in some way. It's some sort of parallel or whatnot. I'm guessing that the glass shards are maybe the people in the town. And every time she tries to put things together, that might be synonymous with her trying to kill people. But at the same time, she said putting those glass shards together, it's going to, reminisce to maybe some sort of truth. It's going to maybe put something together that will reveal, I don't know, some sort of revelation about where they are and what's going on. But she's also acting as though she has no choice. right? She's acting as though whatever these voices are telling her to do, it's for some sort of greater good, or she just absolutely is compelled to do these things. Or else more bad things will happen, or more people will die in that process. But I am actually very curious. I mean, clearly these voices are tempting her with, I guess, the idea of being able to go back home. But I mean, what do you think about Sarah's situation so far? Are these voices, do you think these voices are trying to set her up? Why exactly would they want to have Toby die and then to have it look like the monsters did it? Like, what exactly is the end game of these voices? Are the voices the monsters? Are they working with the monsters? Are they separate? Do they have their own agenda? I don't know, but let me know if you have any ideas. After finding out about the death of his dad, Kenny is heartbroken and angry. He goes out to cut some more wood to make some new chess pieces in memory of his now dead father. Damn, I really felt bad for Kenny here. I mean, look, it's hard enough dealing with a parent that has dementia, but then to pile on the fact that you're in a place where monsters are all about too, and then you see your father like killed like that. Oh, I feel so bad. But, I think that it was interesting for Kenny to point out that, have you ever noticed that these monsters only walk? They don't run. And all of that really just backs up what Donna also said in terms of how these monsters just apparently like to hunt people for fun. So, kind of keep that in the back of your mind that this is a thing with these monsters. But it might also speak to maybe their motivations later in the season. So let's keep that in mind. Ethan stares out the window and Julie tells him another story. She asks what he's looking at and he says nothing. Then we see that Ethan is a whole liar because he apparently is looking at a boy dressed in white, smiling right back at him. Listen, just when you think this show has enough going on, it throws another curveball at you, right? So now Ethan is able to see things that other people can't see. So now my question is is the boy in white one of these monsters? But then again, he's showing up in the daytime. So maybe he's not a monster, but other people can't see him. So is he a ghost? Is this a vision? I don't know. Is he working with the monsters? I don't know. But I would love to hear any ideas that you think. Please let them be known in the comments down below. All right. So this was the end of the episode, but there were a couple clues that I do think we need to pay attention to. So like I said in my previous video, I'm always going to give you guys a couple overarching clues that I think that we need to pay attention to for the rest of the season. So first clue. Everyone apparently does see the fallen tree and the crows. Donna mentioned this. We saw this earlier in episode 1 with the Matthews family. So there's some sort of significance. There's something going on with the fallen tree and the crows. What it is, we don't really know yet. Again, if you got some ideas, let me know. Second clue. Ethan has never had seizures before. Now, is it a coincidence that Ethan started having these seizures right when the creeper monsters started showing up? I don't know, but I do think that is something somewhat significant to keep in mind. Why does he have a seizure? What is going on? What does this mean? Or maybe it means nothing at all. And last but not least, the final clue is there's something special, apparently, about having two cars coming in at the same time. What that is, we're not really sure yet, but I do have a feeling that the emphasis on two cars coming in, that's odd, that's unusual. I think that has some sort of significance. What it is, we're not really sure yet, but I'm sure hopefully we'll find out somewhere down the line. Back at the colony house, Tabitha wakes up from a nightmare about the night before. Jade wakes up chained to the bed yelling for help. Donna nicely tells him to chill out and explains the situation. He doesn't believe them and thinks everyone is just a hired professional playing a prank on him. He steals someone's bike and rides away. So, y'all saw that, right? They just out here free banging and stuff in the colony house like that? Okay. Look, I think this might just be a sneak peek at, no pun intended, at what life is like in the colony house, but we'll get into a little bit more of that a little bit later in the video. But yeah, they're very free in here, apparently. Anyway, I loved what this episode, this moment showed us, especially with Jade's reaction to all this news that he's getting, right? And what I think is that he's thinking all of this is some sort of charade. It's like some escape room type of thing or whatever. And I think that just really goes to show you how much the human mind will go to whatever lengths just to rationalize the crazy stuff that happens and like the irrational stuff, because otherwise you are gonna go crazy yourself. So I do like the fact that he is just one other demonstration of how we will try to outthink the crazy. We check in on various people in town, and Boyd checks in on Frank. Ethan still sees the weird little boy in white. Kenny's mom is worried about running the local diner. Cuckoo Sarah walks in and acts like she had nothing to do with the death of Mrs. Lou's husband. Julie and Fatima continue to hang out, and Victor is outside taking steps to measure something. Now, obviously, one thing that's pretty interesting in this scene was Ethan interacting with the boy in white. Now, I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, is this boy in white like a ghost? Is it maybe just a vision or something? But the crazy thing about it is, not only does Ethan see this boy in white, but he's also interacting with it like in real time. So it can't just be like some sort of vision, from the past or whatever. Like this boy, whatever it is, he's there. He's even telling Ethan to like be quiet. Like, why do you want Ethan to be quiet? You don't want him to talk about you? Like, what is this secret with this boy in white? Now, the other thing to consider here is Frank. Frank is, in the jail cell or whatever because he was responsible for his family's death. And this has just got to be so terrible on him. Look, it's bad enough when you have to deal with the addiction of being an alcoholic, right? Like that's bad enough. Although I could understand how the stress of living in this kind of town would drive someone to that level, of addiction. I understand it, right? But my goodness, to have that compound and then add on to the fact that you're the reason why your family died. That's almost like drunk driving, right? Like if you're drunk driving and you kill someone, like it's a similar type of feeling. Either way, all I know is I just feel real bad for Frank in this situation. Do you? Father Khatri explains the choosing ceremony and what that entails. He explains the other rules, including the box. The only punishment for people is the box. There is no talisman inside, and we learn that it would be the first time that it would be used if someone's action led to other people getting killed. Jim and Tabitha are brought to the same house where the last incident happened. Jim is convinced about the danger and realizes that the town's rules actually do matter. So I really like this sequence because what it does is it added another layer to the whole town, and the town's already complicated. You got monsters coming out at night. That's already a problem. But now we also have this additional human component, which is they have rules, they have consequences, and it's not like they have a whole bunch of rules. They just have this one rule that, if you lead somebody else to get eaten up by these monsters, you got to go out in that box, and ain't no talisman in that box. At this point, we don't know what that even means. Can the monsters find you in the box? Can they smell you? Can they detect you? Like, what does that even mean? But I did like Father Khatri's other example where he was like, living in this town is kind of like when people live on a fault line, where earthquakes are going to happen. Now, personally, I don't know how people do that. I don't know how some of the folks on the West Coast or in other countries can live right there. You living next to a volcano. You living right there where the earth is about to shake. I don't know how y'all do that, but I think what this town is kind of demonstrating is even when you are around danger, humans will still try to find a way to conform and to just cope. And that's pretty much what they've been doing in this town. Now, beyond all of this, we do have the concept of the box, right? And like I said, I don't know, can the monsters catch you or not? We'll find out. But this is interesting to me that this is the only rule in the town. Now, I think what this kind of communicates is the fact that you don't have any other type of crime going on in this town because they kind of operate as a commune anyway. They share things, it's kind of like, why would you steal something from somebody in this town? Like, you don't even know if you're going to live tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like the best thing right now is to just kind of get along and just survive. But just having that one rule does kind of let me know that, yeah, like, you could almost do anything, but that's just the one thing you can't do here. Victor is still checking for measurements with the tree's movements. Ethan wants to know if he can help in any way. Victor tries to get him to leave, but Ethan mentions the little boy in white. He told Ethan that he's friends with the boy in white too. Julie scolds Ethan for talking to Victor and tells him not to talk to him at all. Now, I think we already know Victor is pretty weird, right? Like he kind of lets on as if he knows more than what he does, right? But Ethan tells him about the boy in white, and that immediately changes things for Victor. It was almost like he could immediately relate to something with Ethan. And we've already kind of seen that Ethan and Victor kind of already share some sort of connection, even if it's indirectly. Remember, when Ethan was having his dream, he was thinking about these crayon drawings, which, by the way, Victor just so happened to also be drawing at that same time. So whatever this connection is, besides knowing who the boy in white is, like besides knowing and seeing this boy in white, there might be something deeper, but we're going to have to wait and see what that connection is. Jade goes into the diner, still obviously thinking that this is all an ultimate escape room. He then travels outside of town and finds a cellar of some sort. He opens one of the doors to find a dead body who turns and yells at him. When he looks again, there's nothing there. All right, well, it looks like Jade is finally starting to see visions of his own. And I know all this time he's been trying to rationalize this as like just another escape room. It's a big simulation or whatever. But yeah, there's only so much you can do when you see these things, you look away, and then it's not there. I think it's really starting to become more real for him at this point. And there was another thing that happened during this scene, but we'll talk about it a little bit later. But for now, Jade is starting to become a convert, I think, in terms of starting to realize things are not what they seem. Boyd and Frank go for a walk, and Frank asks him if he could be buried near his family. Later, Boyd goes to the church to talk to Father Khatri. He said that he wanted the box to be just a deterrent and that he can't do it. He can't put Frank in the box. Father Khatri reminds him of the impact of not using the punishment in the event another similar incident happens. Sitting in the box himself, Boyd finally makes his decision. He goes back and gives Frank a talisman and tells him to just go off and live in the little shack in the woods that's been built out there. So I thought this was really, really interesting because Boyd is the sheriff of this town, right? And there's already enough going on with all the monsters and stuff coming out at night. But now you actually have to enforce the law. You only got one law. There's only one rule to take care of. And now you actually got to step up. And the question is, like, I mean, in a place like this, people not going to act normal. Can you really stick to normal rules? I mean, he really thought that, like, okay, if I built this box out here, that's going to scare people even more. But look, at the end of the day, people are gonna people. But I will say this, especially with Father Khatri, I don't think Father Khatri was really pushing Boyd to like punish Frank. Like, I don't think he was like, yeah, more blood, you know. I think his questions were kind of more like, what's the bigger goal here, right? And if you don't punish Frank, then given the system of rules that, by the way, you set up, how is that going to affect the general stability of the town if this happens again? Which, for some of y'all that binge, we already know where this is leading to. But yeah, if you forgive Frank now, what about the next person? Are you going to forgive them as well? I mean, what are you going to do if somebody abuses the one rule that you have and there are no consequences? I mean, people could get killed over petty stuff. You know, you don't know. But if there are no consequences, then there might be even more hell that breaks loose. The Matthews family now gets to choose where they will live. Before that happens, Boyd tries to lecture the crowd about the rules in the town. However, before he could finish, Frank interrupts him. He gives a very heartfelt message about how regretful he is and how he wants to join his wife and daughter. Jade, on the other hand, still thinks this is all a joke and begins to mock the entire situation. Boyd has had enough, and he forces Jade to make a decision where he wants to live, and Kenny escorts him out. He then asks the Matthews family where they want to stay. They all say the town, except for Julie. Now, given what we saw in the episode before, Boyd clearly understands the divide of a family. So I think he immediately starts to empathize with Jim and understands like, ugh, your daughter wants to go to the colony house. You want to go to the town. I know where you're coming from, right? Because we've seen him also go through this with Ellis. But let me say this, as a parent, I totally got annoyed with Julie right here. I mean, yeah, she's young. I get that. But her attitude just annoyed me so much. I mean, only given the logic of the situation here, she wants to basically be grown and do her own thing, which again, the colony house will provide. And I totally get that. However, ma'am, Julie, there are whole monsters out there eating people for breakfast. And you out here thinking that this the time that you gonna have your little coming out party, that you big and grown and stuff? Ma'am, this ain't the time. If there was ever a time to get back close with your family and be all up under your parents and everything, this is it. Look, all I know is that wouldn't have been me. Okay, let one of my little girls talk about they don't want to be in the town with me and my wife and stuff. What? Look, I don't give a damn about your rules. You gonna go by my rule. You staying with me. What? Are you kidding me? And then go out with all them free bangers in there? No. You coming home in the town, that's all. Ain't no conversation. I don't care about them town rules. Y'all gotta be kidding me. But clearly, the Matthews family is built different. But, oh my gosh, going back to Frank, this has got to be so freaking tough. I mean, you can almost feel that level of guilt, that is weighing heavy on this guy. And, I mean, again, he let his whole family die just because of his alcoholic tendencies or whatnot. And I mean, he had the opportunity to run away. He could have been living his life in exile in the woods, but he chose to face the punishment. And you know what? I can respect that. I don't know if I would have made the same decision now, but I understand. Kenny takes Jade to see Toby's dead body. Jade starts to finally get the picture. The diner closes up and the radio turns on. The Matthews move into their home. Jade moves in with Kenny and his mom. Julie is celebrated and welcomed into the colony house. Boyd escorts Frank inside the box. Later that night, Frank can hear the creepers surrounding the box. Soon after, the creepers burst in, and that's the end of Frank. He dead. And I love how they ended this episode with Frank. By the way, I also really like the fact that we don't really get to see the monsters for more than like 2 seconds. I think that in itself is what helps keep the monsters scary. The fact that we kind of know what they look like, but we kind of don't, it really helps play, on our imaginations and stuff. So I really do like that. But I like the way that they ended this episode because it was so reminiscent of the very beginning of the first episode where, the little girl Megan died from grandma monster out there. So like, I thought that was like really handled well. But man, Frank, he went out like a G again. I mean, now I'm just saying, if I was Boyd, if I was the sheriff and I was trying to give Frank a little bit of leniency, I would have just been like, hey man, yeah, you got to stay in this box. Here go this talisman. Just pop that in your pocket right there. I would have given him the talisman. Like, bro, you could have slipped him that. You know what I'm saying? Because here's the thing. The punishment is just to stay inside the box for one night. It's not like he had to stay in the box forever. Right? So I'm like, look, I'd be pretty scared if I was like in a very confined place and I got the monsters just literally walking right around me and I'm not at least like in a home where I can like run or do something. Like, that's scary in itself. But to be in there with no talisman at all, whoo, yikes. Yeah, it couldn't be me. Now, I do think one other thing that's kind of terrifying about the box, I mean, keep in mind, this was like not like just, something made out of plastic or whatever. The other terrifying thing is, look at how easily the monsters just ripped right through those things. Like, they ripped through that like it was nothing. So, clearly, these talismans are incredibly valuable because these monsters, these creepers, they are clearly very strong and very durable. I mean, they ripped through that thing like tissue paper. So they are clearly nothing to play with at all. We start off with a flashback of young Victor climbing out of a cellar. As he walks out, there are several dead and mutilated bodies laying around. We jump forward into the current time with Julie waking up to find old Victor drawing her while she sleeps. Trudy then asks her for her pillow back, and Julie realizes that this girl is a whole klepto and took her clothes. Okay, so judging by Victor's lunchbox, because, you know, they did kind of freeze frame on that a little bit and close in on that, it's possible that he's been there since the 70s. Maybe. But how he's been able to survive is a major question at this point in the story. But I think a bigger question is, why has he been able to survive all this time? But his story apparently is going to unravel as the story progresses. Now, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm kind of glad that Julie got this nice little wake-up call, so to speak. You know, it's one thing to think that you're grown and you're capable of making all these decisions, right? But it's another thing to actually go through life and learn the impact of your decisions after the fact, right? And now she's got to learn how to adjust to these new house rules. Boyd has to clean up Frank's body and takes him over to the priest for burial. Jim and Ethan head over to the diner for breakfast. Jade shows Kenny the place where he saw the crushed body under the boulder and the symbol he saw on the ceiling. Kenny doesn't really believe him. Back at the diner, Ethan gets some pancakes for breakfast. While Jim goes to the bathroom to cry for a moment, Victor comes in to talk to Ethan. He told him that the trees have moved 4 inches. And he also confirms that the boy in white is the same boy that Ethan saw. Jim catches Victor with Ethan and threatens him to stay away from his son. So a couple of things here. We got to learn a little bit more about Jade. So we learned that he had his own software company and that, you know, he's probably one of those Silicon Valley tech guys or whatever. But I think that what we're supposed to grab from this is more so how he thinks, right? He admitted to taking a lot of drugs, right? You know, so he's been high. He knows he can get around a little bit, but I get the impression that this is really to tell us that he's also a pretty logical thinker also. So once reality kind of sets in and he stops thinking this is some escape room or whatever, I think that's when he'll be able to think a little clearer about things. Okay, so I think Victor might be on to something here with the whole trees moving and all that. I mean, he's noticing that the trees have moved 6 inches from where they were before. But if the trees are moving, then maybe that could explain why and how people keep getting lost in this weird town. I mean, we have seen this faraway tree and everybody has seen the fallen tree. So maybe the portal or something inside these faraway trees like opened up some way somehow. I don't know. Now, as for Victor and Jim's interaction, I think that it's pretty obvious that the show is trying to play off of what most people are assuming, right? I mean, you see a grown man talking to a little boy like that. It's not a good look, okay? No matter how you want to explain it. So Jim's reaction to Victor does seem very reasonable at this point. Now, here's something else for you to consider. Victor confirmed with Ethan that the boy in white was real. Now, why is that important? Because, in other words, prior to this moment, Victor was under the impression that the boy in white might have been a figment of his imagination or maybe even a dream of some sort. He didn't think that the boy was real. So that also could mean that all this time, the boy in white has not appeared to anyone else in the town except for Victor, that we know of, right? Like, we don't know if someone else saw him and just kept it to themselves, but for as far as we can tell right now, Victor's the only one that has seen the boy in white before Ethan showed up. So I think one of the questions it kind of makes you want to ask is, are there other things that Victor thought were fake or, you know, part of his imagination, but in fact were actually real? Now, let's kind of go back to Ethan. I'm going to just say this. Ethan has a very interesting habit of potentially saying things that matter far more than we suspect. So if you are a first-time watcher of this series, I want you to pay attention to everything Ethan says, okay? And if you are a returning watcher, if you've already binged everything and you coming back, keep watching until the end of this video because I got something that we need to talk about with Ethan and you don't want to miss that. Julie is having a hard time adjusting. Fatima talks her through her issues until Tabitha comes to talk to her daughter. Julie starts to get very frustrated and calls out her mom for keeping the secret about their divorce. So, you know, I think that like now seeing this interaction with Julie and Tabitha, that it seems like, her decision to go to the colony house it's feeling more like an act of rebellion rather than her just wanting her freedom, right? But I'm gonna cut her some slack because divorce is something that's really hard on families, especially kids, right? And, granted, Julie kind of went with a little bit of a low blow. I mean, talking about Thomas like that, I was like, dang, girl, like, you ain't have to go there with it. Like, ooh, and I think at this point we can assume that Thomas is the child that Tabitha and Jim probably lost. But sitting here saying that, like, you have 2 kids and why isn't that enough? Ugh, geez, that right there, I think demonstrated that Julie is still just a kid, right? Because whenever you are dealing with divorce or the death of a child, it's way more complicated than that for the parents. It's not like, oh, it's cool, we have other kids, so we're fine. So I know it's actually really tough on Julie to see her parents like really, go through this divorce and all that. But I also know it's really tough on Tabitha and obviously Jim too, because Tabitha in this case, she doesn't want her family to get even further broken apart. I mean, she's already got her daughter living with a bunch of weirdos and stuff. So, this is definitely going to be even more of a toll on her. But you guys let me know, what do you think about this situation within the family dynamic? Kenny and Jade talk about various locations from where people originally came from before they got into the town. The radio starts to flicker on and off. Tabitha and Jim start to argue outside. Victor comes to the back of the house and wants to talk to Ethan. He tells him that they have to go out and find the boy in white. So they go head off into the woods. So Kenny told Jade that, like, here were all the locations from, the various places everyone came from. Now, I am still under the impression that the locations of where they came from probably has some significance. I mean, let's think about it. This show is called From, so, where you're from might actually be a factor. Now, I personally haven't found any correlation or anything as to the locations and the dates of where they came from and if there's a pattern there. Maybe there is, but I haven't seen it yet. But I got a question here. You mean to tell me don't nobody else come into this town that ain't from America? Like, you mean out of all these, because you notice all them pins were only in the USA. Nobody even from Mexico. Y'all ain't got no Canadians, nothing. Nobody, no international travelers. What is going on with the US that this is where this little weird Bermuda Triangle fallen tree is happening? Now, we also have Jade noticing the radio going on and off, and that sparked an idea for him, but we will get to that later on in the season. And I also like the what Kenny ended up saying here too, and he was like, yeah, look, the monsters are a problem, but what you really have to worry about is what this place is going to do to you mentally, right? And that a number of thoughts and decisions are going to have to cross your mind living in a place like this. I mean, honestly, I don't even know how people sleep at night in this place. Because, I mean, my worst fear, if I were in the town or whatever, my worst fear would be falling asleep in my house or whatever, or maybe in the colony house, and all of a sudden waking up to one of them smiley things just watching over me just while I wake up, and I have no clue how they got in there. I don't know if somebody dropped my talisman. I don't know if these monsters, found some super duper powers and they could get past it. I don't know. But all I know is that right there would scare me every night. I'd probably just sleep during the day. I don't know. Now, going back to Ethan, I'm not even mad at him at this point for going off with Victor. You know why? Because this, I'm going to put on Jim and Tabitha as parents. And I'm going to judge them from one parent to another parent. These kids, they just be doing anything. You got Julie going off to another house. You got Ethan walking off with some strange old man that he just found. You ain't never you never taught him stranger danger. You ain't never teach him none of that stuff. No. These kids are lacking home training, so I'm not even mad at them. I'm looking at Julie and Jim right now. Now, last thing to consider here. Victor also mentioned that the boy in white chose him a long time ago. So now this evokes the question, why was Victor chosen? And also, what was Victor chosen to do? If you got any ideas, let me know. Father Khatri tells Boyd that he needs to stop feeling sorry for himself. He says that Boyd has to be the strong one here because this chaos is going to take a toll on the town. Victor and Ethan go for a walk in the woods. Victor doesn't want to talk about how he got there or his past. They did see the boy in white walking throughout the woods. They come across a faraway tree, and Victor demonstrates how objects or people can enter in the tree, but where they end up is anyone's guess. Jim and Tabitha finally realize that Ethan is gone and go into the woods to find him. 2 stray dogs come near them, and Victor shoots a gun to scare them off. So I think from these scenes, first thing was, it was really interesting to find out that Boyd was the one that actually found the talisman and brought them into town. But we'll get to that a little bit later for you first timers. Now, as for these faraway trees, though, these things are wild. I don't know their deal per se, but I do wonder how they're going to play a role moving forward. I mean, let's remember that Victor observed that the trees have been moving. And if you also recall, one of our ongoing clues is that everyone has seen a fallen tree before getting trapped in this town. Did a fallaway tree fall and open a portal or something? I don't know. But if you have any ideas, please let me know. Now, something else we have to think about is Victor seemed traumatized when he heard the dogs. Now, judging by the flashbacks, that's got to be connected to his past in some way, shape, or form. But where did these dogs come from? They were around when Victor was a kid, and everyone around him was all killed in whatever massacre happened. But dogs don't live that long, like, given the fact that he was a kid and now he like grown. So if dogs don't live that long and the dogs were apparently around back then, I mean, keep in mind, he also saw the boy in white walking away, and the dogs were around there at the same time. So are the dogs like ghosts or something? Maybe, I don't know. But for those of you that are all caught up all the way with season 2, I got something else to share with you. So again, make sure you stay to the end of this video. Jim tells Boyd about the pictures Victor drew for Ethan and that Victor carries a loaded gun. Boyd gives himself a fresh haircut and joins the Matthews for dinner. Meanwhile, Sarah starts to freak out as a bloody engraving is placed on her arm saying to kill the boy. She collapses and has a seizure. Back at the colony house, Ellis and Fatima give Julie her own bed in their room. Outside, Victor is seen digging up multiple graves to get a head start on the impending doom. You know, I gotta say, I thought it was actually kind of funny to see Boyd getting all dressed up, putting on a happy face, giving himself a fresh cut, and then just screaming in the mirror, right? But I think it's also symbolic of the way of life in this town. I mean, if you really think about it, you have to kind of force yourself to act and try to act normal in the midst of all this madness. Okay, so we got to talk about Sarah. At this point, whatever is interacting with her, they are doing a number on her. I mean, this is the point where I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit more confused as to what's actually going on with Sarah. First, she's hearing voices that's telling her to go kill people and stuff like that. Then she's actually seeing things on her arm, you know. And by the way, I do not believe or subscribe to the belief that those are worms in her arms. I think that they were literally just, I think it was a vision for one, but it was just whatever's interacting with her, they were just kind of showing her an actual message. Now, she did also fall right back into a seizure, and the last time we saw a seizure was from Ethan, and that was right when the monsters were walking out in the first or second episode. So it is possible that maybe the monsters are contacting Sarah and that triggered, I don't know, a similar seizure. I mean, the better question is, are we sure that it's even the monsters that are talking to her or making her do these things? Also, why would these voices or whatever is behind this stuff, why would they specifically want Ethan to be killed? Could Ethan actually be a threat to them? I don't know, but you guys let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. All right, guys, so this is the point where I'm going to have to give you a couple of clues that I think you're going to have to remember for the series overall. So first off, we have the radio playing at random times. Now, at first, we thought that maybe it was just at nightfall, but apparently these radios will go off at any given time. Is there a trigger for it? Not really sure yet, but we got to pay attention to that because clearly this means something. Second clue, and this is something that Victor brought up. He talked about the first 2 cars that came around a long time ago. Now, when Victor was about Ethan's age, this is when that happened. And there's something about this whole 2-car situation that seems like a real anomaly. it seems like it's very special. So it's not something we should like disregard or whatever. Something is very important about this occurrence when 2 cars come into the town, because I'm assuming it's really 1 car at a time that comes, but to have 2 cars coming in, that means something. Christy is taking care of Sarah, but Sarah doesn't want to see her brother Nathan, who just wants to come and check up on her. Boyd comes in to check on Sarah and avoids talking to Christy about his hand tremors. So instead, he then goes outside and keeps Nathan away from seeing Sarah. At the Matthews residence, Jim is creating a board on the wall for his family to start asking questions and try to figure things out together. Nathan sits at home looking at his sister's clothes, which are drenched in blood. Okay, Boyd, this is what I'm talking about. Asking the right questions. I like the fact that he was able to recognize that, hey, you know what? Did these seizures happen with Sarah before? Okay. They're saying that it's the first time, but I like the fact that he's connecting that with Ethan, who also had a seizure as well, if you recall earlier on. So I like the fact that he's kind of putting 2 and 2 together, that maybe when you come around this place in this town, some weird things are going to happen. And honestly, at this point, the weirdest options might actually be the right answer. Now, let me say, man, I love what my man Jim is doing right now. This is exactly what I need more people in this place to do. However, Jim is working a little too small. I know you sitting here making this wall and everything with all these questions on your house wall or whatever. Bruh, I'm going to need you to take that outside, go to the town hall or whatever, and have a big old group meeting. This can't be something that y'all just do on y'all wall. You need to do this with the whole town. Okay. And you look, use a whole side of a house. I don't care. But man, I like where you're going with it. I just need you to think bigger. Now, as for Nathan, man, he knows that his sister is crazy. But unfortunately, it feels like Nathan knows a little too much. And if you've watched any type of horror, you already know the people that know too much, well, it don't end up very well for them. Christy and Sarah start to catch up and have a little girl talk. Sarah asks Christy why her and Kenny don't hook up, but she said that she was engaged to someone else, in her past. Sarah mentioned that she also was with someone, but now it's just her and her brother. She asked Christy a hypothetical question about doing one bad thing to send everyone home. Christy says, yeah, that's probably fine if it's going to save everyone else. So it sounds like Sarah might have been like in an abusive relationship of some sort. It looks like Nathan was the one that actually came in and saved her. Maybe that's why Nathan is so protective of her. And I think the obvious guess here is that she probably had some abusive ex-boyfriend. So Sarah's question is tapping into a very famous philosophical situation or a moral question, right? Is it right to sacrifice the few to save the many?
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
And I think the best way to think about it would be to use the trolley dilemma. If you've ever seen the show The Good Place, they show a great demonstration of this. Do you kill one person to save 5, or do you let 5 people die to save 1? The question becomes way more complex when you add more context, like do you save the president of the country versus 10 inmates that are on death row? Now, Christy in this case gave a very utilitarian answer, basically saying that the needs of the many do outweigh the needs of the few. And that kind of seemed to give Sarah the green light to follow through with the devious thing that she's about to do, thanks to the voices in her head. We find Jade walking around town with the radio, and he enters the bar. He starts to go off and keeps talking until the bartender tells him to just go figure out how to make the radio work. Now, Jade was doing a lot of rambling before he walked into the bar, and he was kind of throwing out these different theories and stuff. And I'm not going to really pretend to know exactly what he was talking about, and it's gonna be kind of hard to communicate that. I was not a physics major or anything like that. I took physics, don't get me wrong, I was decent, but some of the stuff was a little highbrow. And one of the things that he did talk about was the Einstein Podolsky Rosen paradox, I think it's called. And from the little bit of research that I was able to do about it, and hey, if anybody smart out there can explain it better, please let me know in the comments. But all I know is, or from what I could take from it, was that this has something to do with quantum physics and entanglement. And no, I'm not talking about that kind of entanglement, you big nasties. Now, physics aside, I did appreciate some of the philosophy that took place here because I did do a lot of philosophy in school. So the whole concept of Schrodinger's cat definitely made some sense to me. And I'll see if I can try and make it make sense for you, just in case if anybody was lost, and how it actually applies to this town situation. So the whole concept behind this analogy with Schrodinger's cat can be a bit jarring for some, so you'll have to kind of use your imagination a little bit here. But this is basically a thought experiment that says if you put a cat in a box, and let's say you put a little poison in the box and close it up, you wouldn't know whether that cat is alive or dead from the poison until you actually reopen the box. So in a sense, the cat is both dead and alive until you open the box to confirm. You can think back to Ant-Man 3, where Scott Lang was in the quantum storm and every possibility of himself kept multiplying out. It's basically the same concept. So for the case of this show, the people are the cat, the town is the box, and the poison are the monsters. Now, the people outside the town are wondering, are the people in the town still alive? But according to this concept, they're both alive and dead. They have no way of knowing. Again, the people outside the town, they don't know if they're alive or dead. So basically what the bartender Tom was telling Jade was like, look, if you can get the radio to work, that's going to be just like the cat inside the box telling the people on the outside that we are alive, and therefore busting up that paradox or that mystery. I hope that made some sense. Boyd visits his wife's grave. He says that he plans to help the townspeople, but if he fails, it's going to put everyone in a far worse position. He begs her for a sign to just help him out. Nathan goes off to find Father Khatri and confesses to him about what's been going on with Sarah. Meanwhile, Sarah's over at the Matthews place and offers to take Ethan to see the farm animals. Tabitha noticed that Ethan's wound is healing up really fast and decides to go with him and Sarah. At the farm, Sarah traps Tabitha in a room. She then takes out a scalpel and tries to kill Ethan. That is until Nathan quickly jumps in to stop her. Unfortunately, during their struggle, Sarah swipes at Nathan's throat and kills him. Now, I know they said that Ethan was healing up real fast, but my man was up when Sarah tried to kill him. Did y'all see him running away like that? I was like, bro, okay, I guess you did heal up real fast. Now, I do have something to say about that. We're going to save that for the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned for a big clue right there. I mean, Sarah just seems to be, I don't know, a little slow, maybe, a little naive. I mean, it looks like she is trying to do the right thing, but listening to these weird voices in her head, I mean, it's weird, you know, and I don't think she can really tell the difference between the two of whether they're actually doing or leading her to do the right thing or the wrong thing. I mean, you would think that maybe she didn't get the message the last time. I mean, you killed a whole bunch of people and that clearly did not work out for the better. But, you know, I guess we're going to have to wait and see because we don't really know the motive behind these voices. Again, are these voices good? Are they evil? I don't know. I do have a theory about that. So I do want you to make sure that if you have not by now, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you turn on those notifications because once I'm done recapping this season and probably season 2, I am going to drop some theory videos that are going to go back and possibly give you some answers to questions just like that. Jim wants justice for Sarah's actions. Boyd and Father Khatri say that they'll handle Sarah, but she ran off into the woods. Back at the Matthews residence, Tabitha writes her question on the wall. After visiting his wife's grave and asking for a sign, Boyd hears the song on the radio and believes this was the sign he was looking for. You know, I thought Tabitha's questions were actually pretty interesting for a couple of reasons. I mean, she asked, you know, if they even survived the car crash or the RV crash when it, you know, went off road. But, you know, at this point, I would say that all questions are viable. You know, given all the crazy things we've seen, you got to ask these kind of questions and you can't just toss them out and be like, that's crazy or whatever. No, maybe you did die. We don't know. Not yet anyway. Second thing to consider is that the showrunners of this, they were involved with the show Lost that was on ABC. And I didn't watch Lost, so, I didn't really know, but the show is really old, so spoiler alert. But apparently the people or the characters, they were like dead all along or something and maybe stuck in purgatory. I don't know. All I know is people didn't really like the ending or whatever. But I do wonder if this is a way for the showrunners to kind of throw that theory out there again, and maybe it's to throw people off the trail, or maybe they're gonna borrow that same exact theme or that same storyline and, I don't know, just kind of make it a little bit different, maybe even better. Now, as for the song playing on the radio, it clearly was a song that Boyd was familiar with, but I'm going to give you my theory about that in just a little bit, so hold on tight real quick. And then, of course, we have Christy, who's harboring all this guilt because Sarah got the scalpel from her, clinic or whatever. I personally don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think she needs to hold on to that guilt, but Christy probably will anyway. But whatever. This is the point in time where I'm going to give you guys a little bit of clues to kind of remember for this episode and for the series moving on. Now, one thing that stuck out to me, and I do think is going to be very important, is look at Ethan's wound. That thing was healing up very quickly. I mean, he did have a whole object protruding through his leg earlier on, and now he's able to just walk and run pretty decently, and I'm not sure about this yet because it is a little odd, but it kind of gives me the impression that this place and time works very differently, right? So like, just kind of pay attention to how time works in this place. So, let's pay attention to clocks. Let's pay attention to the days, maybe seasons or whatever. But time here clearly does not work the way I think it does. Either that or maybe one of the weird reactions of this place is you just heal up real fast. I don't know. You let me know what you think in the comments below. Now, one other thing to think about is, again, and I've told y'all this before, pay attention to what Ethan says. He said that this place is kind of special, right? But he said that, the place does try to hurt people, but maybe, just maybe, it might be there to help. And is anyone trying to help? That was his question for the board. Something to think about. Nathan is buried after being killed by his sister, and Jade gathers parts from old cars. Tabitha comes to the church and asks Father Khatri, "Are we dead?" As Tabitha leaves, he goes downstairs where we find out that Sarah has been tied up. Now, I don't know about y'all, but this has been an ongoing question for me, which is, have they been in purgatory all this time? I don't know, but I am kind of glad that they that the characters kind of addressed this. I liked Father Khatri's answer to it because it really doesn't matter, right? Like, if you are in purgatory, what's that gonna do? What's that gonna change? Is it gonna do anything for you? The monster's gonna stop eating you? Nah, like, you still gotta learn how to survive, right? But this whole idea of are they already dead, I hope is not actually the case. I know that some of the showrunners of this show were involved with the show Lost, and that was an angle that they used in that very popular show. Hopefully they find a more creative solution behind this mystery and not just repeat the same thing, because I think doing the same thing will be more of a disappointment. Now, it was a bit of a shock to see Father Khatri actually hold Sarah hostage like that. By the way, I'm not going to ignore the fact that my man did lie. He told a whole lie to Tabitha or whatever, before talking about Sarah ran off into the woods. But it also makes sense, right? I mean, Sarah's killed a lot of people, and she says that she's hearing voices, and you can't really trust her, but at the same time, it makes sense to see what she knows and try and figure out what's going on. And of course, being a man of faith, it's not out of the realm of possibility, because reading the Bible, you hear about people, having divine callings and stuff like that. So it makes sense for someone like Father Khatri to kind of sort of believe that maybe there's some spiritual stuff going on. Maybe there's some supernatural stuff going on. Now, whether it's evil or good, that's later to be determined. But I understand why Father Khatri is at least a little bit more open compared to others in terms of trying to get some answers here. Boyd tells Kenny that he's going to go into the woods with a talisman. Kenny doesn't like the idea and storms off. Boyd goes to talk with Christy to find out what's been going on with Kenny. She tells him that maybe he needs a father figure more than anything else. Kenny is carving out some chess pieces like he used to with his dad. Boyd goes out with a ball and a mitt to play catch with him. He tells Kenny that he's sick and that he's gonna go find a way out because he can't protect people in the future. Well, now we finally have, I guess, a better idea of what's going on with Boyd and his hand tremors. The Parkinson's, it could be creeping up on him. Now, one thing I'd be interested in is seeing whether or not his symptoms will get worse. From what I searched out or whatever, just very loosely, it's kind of rare for it to pass on, hereditary wise. But I'm also kind of wondering if this disease gets worse in a short amount of time. And the reason why I say that is because we saw Ethan heal up really quickly, and that was very strange. So I just wonder, can the counter happen where maybe your disease progresses very quickly too? Now, Boyd brought up a very interesting point, and he said that the only reason why they haven't pushed outside of the town is because they didn't have the talisman. They didn't know if they could travel into the woods, especially not at night, or to even go beyond there. But now that they have the talisman, that's a game changer for them, right? And let's not forget that so many things changed for them once Boyd brought the talismans into the town. But apparently no one outside of Boyd has gone into the woods until now, right? And going into the woods, yes, it is very dangerous. But at the same time, you do actually find things like the talisman. They found animals for food and stuff. So it would seem that going into the woods might be high risk, but it could also bring forth high rewards. Tabitha drops off some things for storage at the diner and notices a certain bracelet. Ethan tells her the story of the Chromonocle and how it was able to find treasure in a dragon's cavern. When they go home, Ethan notices a light turning on and off. This prompts Tabitha to start digging in search of the source of power. Now, I don't know what the source of power is in this place, and we probably aren't going to find out anytime soon. However, one thing that stood out to me was Ethan, of course, and I've been saying pay attention to what Ethan says, because he's kind of like the guiding light, I guess, of this show in some way. And he said that they'll find a map in the storage, just like in the Chromonocle story, right? And Tabitha, she did find a bracelet there, which we'll get into. But something in the storage room could be a key to maybe solving the overall mystery. We'll have to wait and see where that goes. For those of you that have actually already binged this season and you're just playing catch up, I want you to stay tuned to the end of this video because I do have an interesting point and something that you might have missed. Jim realizes that the cords don't have wires and the plugs don't look normal. Nothing makes sense. Jade goes into the Matthews home to help figure out how to make the radio work. They both set out into the woods to find the tallest tree and set up an antenna. When Jade touches the tree, he notices blood starts to pour out. Dead soldiers are now hanging from the trees, and blood falls on him, and he starts to see the symbol again. A Union soldier shows up, and Jade starts to run away. He gets stabbed by the soldier, and Jade starts to scream out. Jim rushes over to him, and the vision stops. Okay, so once again, Jade's visions are becoming way more realistic, right? And the one thing that we've seen in common so far is that he usually sees death in some way, shape, or form, and then the symbol appears. So could this be a warning? Obviously, this symbol does not seem like it's a good thing, but you let me know what you think about it. Now, once again, for those of you that have binged this series, I want you to remember this scene because it does have a connection for something that happens at the end of this season. I'm going to cover that in a future video, but don't forget this scene. Jim tries the radio, but there's no answer. Jade keeps drawing the symbols over and over again. Kenny's mom recognized the symbol and went back into the storage room. In a box, they find a radio and a yearbook from 1972. She finds a journal that has the same drawings that Jade was making. So I definitely thought what they found in the box was pretty interesting. I mean, the radio, I don't know if that's going to play a part or not, but the yearbook definitely was intriguing for sure. And it also was from 1972 because right then and there, I'm like, wait a minute. That kind of maybe sort of seems to have a connection with Victor in some way. I'm not saying Victor's in there, but he does have a lunchbox that appears to be from the 70s. So maybe the lunchbox is connected to the 72 year. I don't know, but it was kind of interesting that they kind of threw out that very specific date. Now, the fact that this journal, however, it does have the same symbols that Jade has been scribbling, I think that this does give a lot more credence and credibility to the idea that this has all happened before, you know? And maybe each person in this town, they do play some sort of specific role. So whoever owned that journal before was going through the same things that Jade is currently going through now. And, you know, so I guess that would mean that they're kind of like a parallel to one another. And it kind of also gives me the impression that maybe Ethan could also be a parallel for Victor. Let me know what you think. You know, real quick, Father Katri had mentioned something to Sarah, and he said that like not a single copy of the world's most popular book, the Bible, was found anywhere in the town. And, you know, and that's one of the reasons why he had to kind of write it out from memory and all that. But why do you think that this town doesn't even have a single copy of the Bible? I mean, no one? So no one that was traveling, all these people that were traveling from all different walks of life, nobody had the Bible at all with them? Ever? Now, what Sarah said here was very important. She said that these voices have been there a long time, that they wanted to help, that they were waiting for someone to come and hear them, to help them escape, to help them go home, and that they were just like everyone else in the town. She also brings up the fact that the voices told her about the 2 cars, and that the 2 cars were going to come, and that, you know, apparently whatever was going on with the people in the cars, maybe that's what triggers what happens in the town or something. Like basically they are the key to potentially helping them all escape. But now we have to think about, well, who were in the 2 cars? Well, it was the Matthews family, then it was Jade, but it was also Toby. You know, Toby was also in there. And, you know, both Toby and Ethan were the ones the voices wanted dead. Why? Why would they want them specifically dead? We didn't hear or see anything from Toby, so we really don't know what role Toby might have played in this whole thing. But I am very curious, like, why did the voices really want Toby to go? Keep in mind, let's just take these voices for their word. If they are just like the townspeople, if they are very similar and they're trapped and they want to escape, what does Toby and Ethan have in common here? Jim finds Tabitha digging in the basement looking for a source of power. Tabitha found out that the bracelet was the exact same one that Jim lost when Julie was being born. Now, I've been racking my brain for a minute about this. Is like, why is the bracelet so significant? How did that bracelet make its way there? Now, that was, if I'm not mistaken, Frank and Lauren's things. You know, it came from their house. So this kind of brings the question, could people's past factor into why they're currently here? Julie found some flowers in the colony house. She arranged them on the windowsill. Later, we see a young man walking throughout Colony House as everyone is sleeping. He pulls back the curtain and one of the monsters is outside holding on to the flowers. She asks him to let her inside.
When can I come inside?
Oh, hell no. Oh my God. So first of all, I thought those flowers that Julie picked up, I thought they were like from Fatima or something, you know, like maybe, hey, it was just a way to kind of help people, you know, get used to being here or whatever. But Fatima didn't recognize the flowers. So I'm sitting here like, oh, okay, now it all makes sense. Captain Simp over here is apparently leaving flowers outside for his creature feature girlfriend. I mean, and here's the thing, all she wanted was what? Can I come inside? That's all she wanted to do, okay? She didn't care about nothing else but like, when can I come inside? Listen, you gotta be a special kind of lame to sit here, to be living in this house, living in this town, understanding that monsters are out here straight up feasting and killing on folks, and you think that the best shot you got at being with somebody is being with some girl is to be with one of them monsters? Bruh, leave it there. I'm gonna leave it there because that right there blew me away. I was like, bro, if I was in Colony House and I knew this dude was doing this, oh, I would have tossed him out just like Jazz from Fresh Prince, you know, when he gets tossed out by Uncle Phil. Hell no. Ooh, but y'all already know. Listen. If you're a first time viewer, okay, this is your first time going through this, let me just say that this is probably one of this is the setup. This is the calm before the storm, because the next episode is arguably going to be the best episode in the entire franchise. This episode that's coming up in episode 7 definitely is going to blow people away. I know it had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. But whew, man, this setup. Anyway, there's a party about to be thrown at Colony House. Fatima is being celebrated for having her 1-year anniversary in the town. Since this day does celebrate and remind people of the day they got stuck here, she's really concerned about Ellis drinking too much. Meanwhile, we've got Dum Kevin, who's out here setting flowers for his creature feature girlfriend. So I thought that this was a very interesting look into the colony house philosophy, right? Keep in mind, they're very, very free and they're very different than the people that live in the town. But they're all about living for the right now in a, I guess, more hedonistic type of mindset, you know? And because of that, they're using this moment to like celebrate the anniversary for people that have been here in the town for a while, you know? And I thought it was interesting for Fatima to kind of bring up the counter perspective to that, especially when it comes to Ellis. You know, and when you think about being here, it's going to trigger people, right? Like, yeah, okay, you've made it for a year, but it's like, golly, you also going to start thinking about all the people that you've lost, all the opportunities and things that you can't do anymore. And, you know, it can have like a celebratory factor, but also a very depressing element as well. Now, here's something else to think about. After Donna gave Fatima her gift, we saw Fatima celebrating with another female resident of the house. Now, at first glance, the attention falls on Julie, who seems to be a little bit envious of this situation. But on a second watch, you can also see that Dum Kevin. He was also there right before walking away. And this was interesting because I think it kind of added a little bit more reason why someone like him would fall for that monster. Clearly, he's been lacking any type of love or attention, and apparently his only option is to, well, you know, get on up with some monster outside. So one other thing to kind of consider here is during Donna's speech, she mentioned how
1 year ago today, our dear sweet Fatima came into our lives. Some of you were here then, many of you arrived since.
And I wonder, does this mean that there's been an uptick perhaps of occurrences in the town? Have more people been added at a higher rate? One theory that's been kind of going around is that the town might need a certain quota of people or a certain quota of residents. I'm still kind of working that out, but you guys let me know. What do you think about that? Do you think the town needs to have a certain amount of people at any given time? Jim makes plans for the antenna tower. He says that he's going to need almost all of the town's resources and the colony house to make it work. Meanwhile, Father Khatri meets up with Boyd. Boyd shares his plan to go out into the woods while Father Khatri shares his background story with him. He said that there was a boy that would come to his church who didn't want to go home one day. Rather than giving him shelter, Father Khatri sent him home with a candy bar. When he went to the boy's home, he saw that the father had severely abused and physically beat up the child. Khatri beat the father up in a fit of rage. He drove out to a bridge and almost committed suicide until he heard what he believed was the voice of God telling him to take another path. After arriving to the town only 2 hours later, he buried those same items that Sarah was able to draw on paper. He tells Boyd that Sarah is locked up in the basement and that she is the key to solving this mystery. His belief is that him, Boyd, and Sarah all need to go out into the forest to find some more answers. So I love the fact that we got Father Khatri's background story here. And I definitely found it very intriguing because if we're to believe that there, you know, the theory that's been floating around that maybe everyone in town is in purgatory, right? Like if we believe the purgatory theory, this story might add a lot of weight to that, right? So think of it like this. After Father Khatri's confrontation with that boy's father, he was about to commit suicide, right? And if you're familiar with the Catholic religion, suicide is a major no-no. You don't want to do that. That is a one-way ticket straight to hell for Catholics. So he mentioned that before he made this jump off of the bridge, he just so happened to hear from God. Was it God? I don't know. Because again, 2 hours later, boom, you're here in town. But now there is a question here. The voices that are talking to Sarah, they happen to know where the priest buried all this stuff. So the question is, how did they know this? So my question for you is, what do you think is the reason behind how they know this? Are they in purgatory? Because if everyone in town is in purgatory, then what the hell is up with the voices that are talking to Sarah? Because they sound like they're in another purgatory too. So what do y'all think is going on? One Colony House guy was talking about string theory and pocket dimensions. He mentions a comment about Ellis shooting up the place, which clearly triggers Ellis. Donna KO'd Buddy for his remark. So my guess here is that, this show is going to really like to throw out a bunch of different theories, right? The pocket dimensions and the string theory, that could be true of what's actually going on here, and maybe not, right? I mean, it's really hard to tell, if they're just trying to throw us off the trail or if they're just giving us major hints of what's going on. Not to mention the fact that, like, you do have faraway trees that, you jump into a tree and it takes you somewhere else or whatever. So that sounds like a pocket dimension to me, kind of, sort of, maybe. I don't know. But the guy here in this scene, his name is Dale, and he makes that comment that, apparently, shooting up the place and talks about, like mother, like son when he's talking about Ellis. And I figured this kind of gives us a clue about Ellis's past, right? And especially his mother. So apparently his mother shot up the place. We don't know how, we don't know to what degree, but we will be learning more about that later on. By the way, fun fact, Dale, who was the guy that was talking, he's actually the real life husband of the actress that plays Donna. So it was kind of funny to see her taking a whole shot at her husband like that. Now again, not in the show. They're not, married in the show. I'm talking about in real life. They are husband and wife. But these actors are doing a great job. And I really love that scene, that interaction. After knowing that, it was pretty cool to see that. We go back to Dumb Kevin as he starts talking to his monster girlfriend, Jasmine. She promises that she will be the only one to enter the house if he opens the window. Well, he lets her in, and while they start kissing and she starts touching, she starts to scratch him up a little bit. Things get a little bit rough, and then she bites out his tongue and attacks him. He dead. Oh my God, Kevin. Oh my God, Kevin pissed me off so much in this whole episode. Like, the moment we found out that he was leaving them flowers and edible arrangements for this monster, I was just like, bro, I'm done with you. I'm done with your silly, goofy self out here putting everybody in jeopardy. Oh my God. Listen, if you want to be out there with creepy Jasmine, you want to go out there and have some monster babies, bro, you go out there. Take yourself outside, okay, man. If I was in the house and I knew Kevin was, I would have thrown him out just like Jazz get thrown out in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Okay, you would have been gone too fast. Okay, forget the box. You ain't getting no box. You just gonna get kicked out. Oh my gosh. Okay, look, I know Kevin was a setup for the madness that is about to happen. Okay, I already know that. But this was so frustrating. How could you be this dumb and crazy? I know that the monsters get in your head, okay? Clearly they do. They got in that little girl's head when they talking about, oh, I'm your grandma and all that stuff. Okay, so maybe there's some psychic stuff going on. I don't know. But Jesus, you got to be a special kind of dumb to reconcile the violence and madness and craziness that these monsters are fully capable of, to risk it all for whatever this Jasmine chick is offering you. Okay, like, she was worth it? Huh? Jasmine said something really interesting here.
It wasn't my choice to be this way.
Now, if we take her for her word on this, then that could feed into the other theory that's been floating around, that maybe, just maybe, these monsters could have once been human. Kevin did say that she was very warm, and I don't know about you guys, but I thought that she was also going to be cold, because they do look like zombie-like monsters. But that leads to an even bigger question, which is, then who or what turn these monsters into what they are? Again, that's if she's telling the truth. Now, on the flip side, she also said that she wasn't going to let anyone in, and later we found out,
and the lie detector test determined that was a lie.
Jade continues to draw symbols in Kevin's book. Mrs. Liu yells at him to come down for dinner. He finds a page that's stuck together in a journal that he's been going through. A photo drops out of a man holding the same journal. Kenny's mom notices that Victor is in the background. Whoa, okay, well, it looks like we just got another piece to this ever-growing puzzle. And earlier, we saw a flashback of Victor when he was walking out of that cellar or whatever and seeing, all the dead bodies and all the massacres and stuff. But this picture, I think this picture proves that Victor had others in the town before the massacre happened. And it also shows that life seemed, I guess, kind of pleasant. I mean, it clearly was nice enough for y'all to take a Polaroid picture. I mean, listen, I'm not taking no pictures while monsters are running around. Who you gonna say the pictures for? Who you gonna show these pictures to? What's the point of taking pictures when you literally, keep in mind, this was before they even knew of the talismans, okay? So my question is, like, what y'all thought? Y'all must have thought y'all was on vacation, because ain't no way you gonna sit here and, laugh and smile and all that stuff if you know the monsters are out there killing people every night. But I don't know, maybe life was different back then. I don't know. Jeepers Creepers, Jasmine opens up the window, letting the monsters come in through the bathroom window. Meanwhile, Julie goes into Victor's room and he appears to be packing his things. Down the hall, Trudy walks into a room full of monsters. They circle her and start touching all over her. She dead. Sitting on the stairs, Dale feels some blood from Joker Face falling on him. All hell breaks loose as the monsters surround the colony house and infiltrate the inside as well. Victor helps Julie escape the house and he sees the boy in white. Victor tells Julie to jump inside the faraway tree. When she does, she ends up in the cellar area. Back at the colony house, Ellis mistook Trudy's body for Fatima. Before he knew it, Joker Face was right behind him. Ellis plays 0 games and leaps out the window, breaking his arm. Fatima takes Ellis into the vestibule of the house and hangs up a talisman. The monsters are unable to get to them. Father Khatri and Boyd hear Donna's van and they quickly go outside to help everyone inside the sheriff's station. They successfully get everyone inside as the monsters get closer. Out of nowhere, a bald-headed scallywag monster slashes Father Khatri's neck. He prays the Lord's Prayer, but he then dies in Boyd's arms. He dead. Oh my God. Yo. When I tell you guys, when I first watched this episode, I think it was like 2:00 in the morning. I'm sitting downstairs. I'm watching this thing and my mouth is like wide open. My heart is racing. Listen, this had to have been one of the most stressful moments in television history. I ain't never been so pressed from a TV series in my life. That just one sheer moment of madness was, unimaginable. Listen, I know it's hard enough that literal death awaits you if you go outside at night. But then to add the additional fear and the danger when it comes inside at any moment like that, thanks to one stupid dum-dum, I don't know how anyone could sleep in Colony House. Like, I don't know how y'all do it, because at this point, you took away the one safety blanket, the one security blanket that gave people a sense of hope, that gave people a sense of comfort, knowing, hey, it's all good, everything is boarded up, but you got the talisman up and you're fine, right? I mean, y'all comfortable enough to go party, right? But all you need is one. All you needed was one stupid person, Kevin, to mess it all up, and it just went down the drain. Oh my God. Listen, first of all, if I was in there, which God forbid, please don't ever let me go in there, I'd have to be in the town. Because at least if I'm living in the town, I'm either living alone or I'm going to live with the one person that I can absolutely trust won't sit here and pull a stupid Kevin move like that. Woo, because my heart can't take it. I can't. And let me just say, Joker Face has got to be one of the creepiest of all these monsters. I mean, all of them look suspicious for real, but Joker Face and his smiles and all that, nah, man. I mean, look at his face. Look at this face, full of blood and everything. Is that even makeup? I don't even know if it is. I mean, this guy's got to be scary just with his regular face. Oh my God. Now, I'm going to throw this out there for my theory makers and out there. You know, I haven't thought this all the way through, but I feel like there is a connection. I feel like there's something to it about the monsters going for people's mouths. And, you know, again, I don't know exactly what it is. It's a weak theory, but it's something I want us to just kind of keep an eye on. Like, what is so intriguing about people's mouths and the monsters? But let me just also give some kudos real quick. I am so proud of my man Ellis for not playing around. He ain't asked no questions. He didn't sit there and second guess nothing. This man said, yo, it's better to just jump out this window and break my whole arm than it is to get caught by one of these monsters. Shout out to him, and shout out to Fatima for her quick thinking. However, now that they've shown us this with her and him in the vestibule, I'm wondering if the talisman is powerful enough to keep the monsters out. Is it also possible that maybe they can trap one of the monsters inside? Maybe the townspeople could lure them in and just trap them inside or something. Maybe they could interrogate one of the monsters, or I don't know, have them burn up when the sun rises. Who knows? I don't really know, but feel free to let me know what you think about the possibility of trapping one of these monsters. And again, let me just say, shout out and rest in peace to Trudy. I'm really hurt that she got. I feel like she should have been here a little bit longer. I was starting to like her character, and I don't think she deserved that fate. And my goodness, shout out to Father Khatri, and rest in peace to him, because man, that's gonna be a loss. That is gonna be a loss. Boyd packs up his things. Kenny says that Colony House people will have to merge in with the townsfolk. Boyd tells Kenny to talk to the people and heads back to the church. He takes Sarah for a walk into the woods. He doesn't trust her and tells her that Father Khatri is dead. He leaves her in a shack until he returns. She lets him know that he doesn't have to restrain her because all she wants to do is just help. All right, so, let's kind of keep in mind here that Boyd had a plan to go out into the woods already, and he was already set on looking for answers. But now with Father Khatri being dead, it's kind of more of a pressed mission to help figure things out. This was really that teetering point for him. And now that he knows that Sarah is actually still alive and that she is in Father Khatri's basement, he's even more pressed because look, Father Khatri was look, she could be the key to all of this. And it was kind of sort of his last thing that he communicated, to Boyd. So this is the main reason I think that Boyd is even entertaining the idea of tolerating Sarah to come along at all. Now, I know Sarah has been pretty weird and she has done some jacked up things, but at this point in the series, I'm really starting to kind of sort of believe her. I mean, she seemed pretty gullible before listening to those voices and all, but I think Father Khatri was right that she could be more helpful than people think. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you trust Sarah at this point? We have a flashback of Boyd traveling with his family. His wife Abby and son Ellis are driving and having a good old time until they come across the fallen tree and crows in the road. While they drive through the town, Father Khatri stops them, trying to warn them. They hear the shrieking of the monsters from far away and go into hiding underground. They hear the screams of people being killed outside. The next morning, they see all of the carnage. After being briefed on the situation by Donna and Father Khatri, Boyd starts to organize the town and collect up all the resources. Okay, so it seems here that we finally gotten to the point where we're starting to get a little bit more background story for Boyd and Ellis. Now, here's one thing I want you to kind of pay attention to that you might have missed maybe the first time watching this series, if this is your second time watching it. Now, we all know that everyone sees the fallen tree at some point, right? But notice here that the tree that Boyd and his family come across is slightly different than the one that the Matthews encountered earlier in the show. This might imply a couple of things. Either the tree falls differently depending on which direction you're traveling from, or people just so happen to come across a different fallen tree, or there's a force at play here that is intentionally using the trees to trap people. I'm thinking that if it were some sort of natural occurrence, even if it were, let's say, alien or supernatural, that maybe the tree would be the same. But if it's different, maybe it's because the powers that be could be adapting depending on the traveler. I'm not really sure, but what do you think is the explanation for having the trees fall in different ways? So as we go back to the town in this flashback, now we're getting a good sense and a good look at how things changed once Boyd actually came into town. We got to see firsthand why they call Boyd Mr. Fish and Loaves. And for those of you that don't know, this is a reference to a biblical story about Jesus Christ. The story goes that Jesus fed thousands of people with only 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. So we're essentially seeing, in a similar way, Boyd is coming into a situation and he's gathering resources that are very few, but it's going to aid the many people in the town. You might also notice here that while Father Khatri was coming to help Boyd, unlike in the beginning of the series, there was no actual welcoming committee or process for newcomers. People had to hide from the monsters since there were no talisman to protect them yet. By the way, did you see Dale? He was also hiding with everyone underground. Remember, he's the same guy at the colony house that was also getting on Ellis and making that sly remark about his mom.
Like mother, like son.
So Dale has seen a lot and he's a seasoned resident. And in case you missed it, remember the monsters were screeching all the time, especially when Boyd first arrived. The fact that the monsters are no longer shrieking, in my opinion, I think it demonstrates to us that the creatures are able to adapt and change. This kind of goes back to what Kenny was talking about in the previous episode, where he was saying that basically the monsters started to just walk and not run after people. And I think that this kind of also indicates that this is a fun game for the monsters, so by not screeching and not, scaring people up like this, I think it probably goes more into like making the hunt more fun for them in some sort of weird way. I think it's very interesting here to really think about like what life was like before Boyd came into the picture and like changed up the whole system. Because keep in mind, there was no system before Boyd, entered the town. Because at this point, the only way life was, the only way, people had to deal with things besides hiding was when they met like a new resident, they hit them with that Terminator 2 line.
Come with me if you want to live.
So it's really interesting to see how much of a difference Boyd has made in the town and why the townspeople respect him so much. The residents now start to merge everyone together from both the town and the colony house. Jade goes off to search for Victor. At the Matthews residence, Julie recounts her experience after the colony house massacre when she escaped through the faraway tree thanks to Victor. All of a sudden, Jade barges in the Matthews residence. Jim checks him real quick and tells him that he did receive some static on the radio. That inspires them both to petition Donna in using the colony house as a tower. She agrees to let them go ahead and build it. So given the chaos that just happened in the last episode, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that, but some of the residents in the colony house are now going to go live with the people in the town. And I gotta say, I don't blame them one bit, not one bit at all, because if it was me and I was living in that colony house and that thing just happened, oh my God, listen, first of all, I would feel some kind of way living in that colony house. I'd feel super traumatized. I wouldn't trust nobody. Put me in a town, at least I know that, there's like 4 people in the house or something like that. I can keep an eye on them, and we ain't got people like Dum Kevin letting windows open for the monster girlfriends. As for this radio idea, this is clearly their best shot to get a signal to the outside world or dimension. After that attack on Colony House, I totally understand Donna just being like, you know what, whatever, because she said later on that like 14 people got killed in the massacre. And keep in mind that Donna has been in the town for about 3 years now. So the Colony House has kind of been like a safe home for her at this point. So with the Colony House and the sense of home kind of being threatened, you really don't have much to lose by just building a radio at this point. Tabitha finds Julie in the basement. Julie is still distraught and asks her mom about their divorce. Tabitha confesses and tells her the truth about Thomas's death. She said Thomas rolled off the changing table and her and Jim tried to pretend like everything was just fine. Woo! Okay, so listen, I'm a parent. You know what I'm saying? And so I can totally sympathize and empathize with like other parents dealing with loss. I don't even want to imagine what it would be like to lose a child at all. And if I'm being 100% transparent with y'all, which I'm not going to lie to y'all, it took a lot for me not to judge as well. I'm just saying, I understand if you was a first time parent and you just didn't understand the ins and outs of being a parent. I get how this whole baby rolling off the table thing could happen. I get it. Accidents happen. I'm just saying, y'all had a whole kid. Y'all had a whole kid with Julie before. How y'all get so... Listen, I'm gonna try not to... I'm trying not to be judgmental, but I'm saying I'd be lying if I told you I didn't think about it. Like, you just gonna turn your head? And what kind of changing table was this? Because the changing tables we had, there was a rail or something. Anyway, whatever. Okay, it's for the writing. It's for the TV show. Whatever. Let me get back to it here. But Tabitha said that this situation pretty much broke her. And you know what? That actually makes a lot of sense. But when she talked about how they had to try and pretend everything was fine, that just kind of tells me that they never properly grieved. But I will say that I am very happy to see Tabitha and Julie have this connective moment right now, because honestly, based off of what we've seen before, you know, when Julie was just acting out of pocket, I think they needed this level of reconciliation. During Boyd's flashback, we find Abby staring off into the distance, and Ellis is worried about his mom. Boyd comes back from one of his many adventures out in the woods, and he returns back with a goat. He says that other livestock, like chickens, are also out there in the forest. Ellis begs his dad to stay because his mom is losing it. Boyd ignores him and goes into the forest anyway. He tries to mark his way on the trees until he sees a dog. After trying to follow the dog, Boyd ends up lost. Nightfall comes and he can hear the shrieking of the monsters. He falls into a cavern with the monsters close in pursuit. However, they find him and turn around and leave. Boyd looks around and finds several talismans embedded into the walls. So I think what Boyd said here was really true, probably for the entire show. And he said the moment we stop looking for answers, that's when we lose. And I think that is so important, you know, because nobody knows what's really going on, and any and all answers can definitely be something helpful for them to hopefully get out of there, right? And we just saw Boyd go, half a mile into the forest, and he was able to find livestock like goats and chickens. I mean, this is really kind of interesting to me, because I'm sitting here like, yo, for the last, 2 years, what were the townsfolk even doing? Apparently, they didn't even bother to go out to look for anything. Like, how were y'all eating? What were y'all eating? I'm assuming that they probably were only eating like the food that they might have brought while they were traveling, perhaps. I don't know. But I mean, I would at least go look for stuff, you know, at least. I mean, nobody was posting watch. Nobody was setting up nothing for 2 years. And true to his own word, on his adventure, we see that Boyd discovers the talisman. This was obviously a game changer. And while this scene, I think, serves the basic purpose of letting us know where the townsfolk got the talisman, I think it invokes even more questions. The cavern seems to have some sort of covering with the branches and leaves, but it also obviously has the talisman inside too. So based off of what we've seen, this is a bit more evidence on how the talisman are supposed to work. We know that they have to be hanging up, and it must be in some sort of enclosed area. I know some people may say, hey, Boyd wasn't in an enclosed area because there was no physical door. Well, I don't think you need an airtight closing. You had those leaves and branches that were kind of working as a door. However, my assumption here is that there's some sort of magic at play here with the talisman. So the only way to really break this spell, if that's what we're going to call it, is if someone from the inside does so. And we've seen that happen at least twice already, with the little girl in the first episode and Dumb Kevin when he let Jasmine inside the colony house. Both of them broke the seal of protection, so to speak, when they opened the entry to let the monsters in. But when it comes to the talisman, listen, I've got even bigger questions, and that is, who actually was living in that cave and who made the talisman in the first place? Because clearly, whoever it was, they know the rules to this world and the weaknesses of these monsters. So do you have any good guesses as to who or what was responsible for the talisman? The next morning, Boyd decided to take the talisman back to the town. He suddenly hears gunshots and runs back. When he arrives, he sees Abby shooting people left and right. She doesn't believe any of this is real, and it's all one big nightmare. When Ellis steps into the picture, Abby aims her gun to shoot him too. However, Boyd quickly fires and kills Abby. Wow. Okay, so there's clearly a lot to process here in this moment. So Abby was apparently going through something, as Ellis was also trying to warn Boyd about earlier, right? And now we see what that was, and we also see that Abby finally snapped. Earlier, she mentioned that, you know, she was thinking about a dream that she had when she was a little girl, and I really, really wish that maybe at least sometime later in this show, that we actually find out what that dream was, because it might be another clue as to what is going on, and and maybe it'll help us solve the mystery of this place. Anyway, Abby believes that this is all some nightmare and that the only way to escape is through death. It's hard to say whether she's actually right about this or not. At this point, I'm getting the feeling that this is another ploy by the show. Remember in the last episode, I talked to you guys about how Dale was mentioning pocket dimensions and stuff like that. And before this, we had Tabitha going to Father Khatri in the church, and she was asking him about, hey, are we all dead? Did we die in the car crash? And we've had all these different theories that probably us, the audience, also thought about. We've seen the characters push these things forward before. Now, Abby's belief here is that this is all some sort of nightmare and all they have to do is die in order to wake up. And you know what? This could also be another popular belief that a lot of people, watching the show believe, but it could also be something to just throw us off the trail of what's actually going on in this place. But with all of that aside, now we know what happened with Abby, and that basically she lost it, right? Whatever was going on in her head, it snapped. And I'm not sure if she happened to be influences by voices like Sarah, like how she was hearing voices, because she has been kind of acting a little weird here. We don't know if she's seeing things and visions, kind of like Jade has been seeing stuff either. As for Boyd, killing your wife, trying to protect your son, I mean, my goodness, that has got to weigh heavy on this man's heart, especially for this long in this place. I mean, I really have no idea how they're holding it together at all. But at the same time, we do have more background as to what this beef is between him and Ellis. But you all tell me in the comments, what do you all think it was really going on with Abby? Back to the present, Boyd visits Ellis in the clinic to announce that he's going back out into the woods. He wants to let Ellis know that he loves him and he doesn't want any regrets in the event that he doesn't return. Fatima tells Ellis that whatever happened in the past wasn't Boyd's fault and that he better go talk to his father. He listens to her and heads out after his dad. He told Boyd that he not only loves him, but he also acknowledges that Abby's death wasn't his fault. The two embrace and reconcile. While this is happening, Sarah decides to be hard-headed and steps out of the shack. Boyd asks Ellis to promise him that he will keep Sarah's status a secret until he comes back, and they'll talk about everything when he returns. Boyd takes Sarah with him into the woods. Back in the town, Kenny addresses the whole community and says that everyone needs to be united. Jim tells everyone about his plan to build the radio tower on Colony House, and everyone decides to pitch in. Why is Sarah so hard-headed? Like, seriously, didn't Boyd tell her to stay in the shed? Does she not realize that there's a whole town of people that don't like her guts right now? I don't understand why Sarah can't follow basic instructions. All she had to do was stay there, but no, she had to come outside and be nosy. I mean, stay your tail inside, ma'am. Look, you real lucky that Boyd came out and spoke on your behalf, because otherwise, you don't know what would have happened to you. But on another note, let me just say I'm here for this reconciliation and healing between this son and father. I loved how Ellis was able to finally realize that he's only alive thanks to his father's efforts in finding the talisman. I thought it was odd that Ellis, of all people, held on to this grudge for so long with his dad over his mom's death. But just like Tabitha, I think this was a case of unprocessed grief. Ellis held on to his pain and never dealt with it, hence why he didn't fix things with his dad until now. For those of you that are aware, one of the many stages of grief is anger, so it does make sense that Ellis is now finally confronting this. Anyway, as for the people in the town, it looks like we finally have a plan, and I could not be happier about this because we finally have people working together, to find answers. And I've said this before, it's really bugged me that we've had this whole town in this whole mystery and nobody seems to be taking any type of effort to actually get answers. Y'all couldn't walk 5 feet into the forest just to find some food? There was whole goats and chickens and all this stuff. Y'all didn't even go bother to look? My goodness. And listen, I'm telling y'all, if it was up to me, we having town hall meetings every day. Okay, every day the agenda's gonna be the same. I don't care. Listen, have you heard some voices today? Let me know. Have you had any visions? Talk about it. Everyone's background story, write it down. And we definitely having round the clock meetings about everything and anything Victor has drawn on paper. I don't even care if you had a bad dream. You better tell it. Boyd and Sarah start their journey into the woods. They set up camp at the original location where Boyd originally found the talisman. As Kenny continues to step up in Boyd's absence, he and Christy continue to get their flirt on. The town and colony folk have merged together after the incident at Colony House. Some of the Colony House folks have moved into the sheriff's office. Meanwhile, Tabitha is finishing up her digging in the basement. She starts to go upstairs, except all of a sudden, she finds herself going up a different pair of stairs. She hears a phone ringing, a baby crying, and a strange horn blowing in the distance. As she climbed up higher, she saw Jim hanging upside down. He started to yell, but the sound of the RV crash replaced his scream. She quickly wakes up from her nightmare. All right, so first off, we see that the town is starting to come together after the horrible tragedy that happened at Colony House. And let me just say, I'm actually digging the fact that Kenny is stepping up in Boyd's absence here. You know, all this time, you know, we want to see Kenny kind of grow up a little bit, you know, and Boyd done gave him the keys to the kingdom. He was like, look, I'm out of here, so you the man now. And look, you know what? I like the fact that, you know, he's starting to step up with Christy too. Listen, I don't know about y'all, but I think I could really see them becoming a real couple. Can't you? But whatever. We need to talk about Tabitha and her dream because, whoa. There was so much going on here. At this point in the story, it's not clear where she was specifically, but it seemed like she was waking up in a tower of some sort. The horn that she heard sounded like a ship passing by or something like that. As for that baby that was crying and the phone ringing, I think that this was a direct callback to the traumatic passing of her baby son, Thomas. Back in episode 8, remember she had told Julie about how Thomas was on a changing table when the phone rang and the baby unfortunately fell. Now, we also saw a random bottle falling down the stairs, but we'll talk about that possible connection later in this video. Now, you also had Jim hanging upside down and screaming with the sound of the RV crash. Now, I'm not sure what to make of this either, but I think there's a possible explanation that will probably make sense a little bit later on in this video. Now, of course, I'm not sure how anyone could miss this. Probably the most interesting thing that we saw in this dream were the years that were written on the staircase. I do believe that these dates have a connection to what happened later in the episode, but one date that does stand out to me is 1864. During that time, the Civil War was happening, where the northern part of America was fighting the southern part over the issue of slavery. What's crazy is that this could possibly relate to Jade's vision of a black Union soldier from the Civil War. What these other dates could mean is anyone's guess. There are some significant historical things that happen during these dates, but how or if they connect to this crazy town is an entirely different question. Now, listen, I've tried my best to try and figure out if there was a pattern or some sort of connective tissue between all of these dates, but I really couldn't find anything too meaningful. You know, maybe a couple things would connect here, but all of them wouldn't really connect. So right now, you know, I'm still going to keep looking for that. If I can figure something out, I'll put that in a separate video. But I do think that right now, the most significant date that we can really pay attention to is 1864. That one seems to have more connective tissue just in this episode alone. So for now, I think that's our best bet, to just use that as a starting point to figure out what the hell is actually going on. Now, if you have any ideas or theories about these dates or how they connect, please let me know in the comments down below. Back to the story, Boyd continues into the woods with Sarah, but he carves some signs in the trees to try to mark his path. As they were walking, Sarah ended up telling Boyd that the voices in her head told her that she had to kill those specific people or her brother and everyone else in the town would end up dying. They also told her about the 2 cars that were about to come into the town. Boyd ends up believing her and believes that she's also not a threat, and therefore he goes ahead and uncuffs her. Okay, so it sounds like we actually have an explanation behind Sarah's actions. You know, the fact that she got Kenny's dad killed and that she was trying to kill Ethan. And a lot of it is because of what these voices told her. Now, it's not like she was bullied into this, but rather these voices predicted things that for whatever reason, they'd have no business knowing. Keep in mind, they also predicted that thing with Father Khatri that we saw later on. So, the fact that these voices told her that 2 cars were going to come at the same time. And this, of course, is an anomaly for the people in the town because they're used to only having 1 car come at a time. And let's not forget, Victor kept harping about the 2-car thing happening before, and this was like very unique. It was a very special situation when 2 cars would come into the town. And last time Victor was like, well, here we go again. But these voices also mentioned the consequences of not killing Ethan or, the other people that Sarah ended up killing. And that was like everyone was going to die. And that's kind of like, a screwed up situation and that she had to consider. And going back to Victor, the last time the 2-car thing happened with him, everyone in the town was brutally killed. So maybe these voices are trying to help avoid another massacre by pushing Sarah to only kill a few to save the many. But I don't know. I'm still kind of on the fence as to whether these voices are good or not. I know obviously it's not good to murder, but what if that theory of killing a couple people, actually sets people free, or maybe you kill a few to save the many? Maybe that theory could be true. I'm not really sure, but I do recall that is what Abby thought. So what do you guys think? Could these voices be on the side of actually helping? Or are they also just evil and they just want to see more death? I don't know. You let me know. Donna has woken up to find Eric, one of the residents, has committed suicide by hanging himself. Traveling back to the colony house, Fatima and Ellis reflect on what life could be like if they were to ever escape this place. Meanwhile, Donna is starting to emotionally break after the suicide that took place earlier. Now, let me just say, I really like this conversation between Ellis and Fatima because I thought it was a really legit concern to have after living in this nightmarish kind of place. I mean, your PTSD has got to be off the charts if you were to come from Fromville back to the real world. I mean, could you ever sleep the same? Could you trust your dreams or nightmares? Would you still sleep with a talisman hanging on your door? I mean, we know how difficult it can be for people who just have fought in wars for long periods of time and come back home, and that PTSD could be real for them. We know people that go off to jail for a long period of time and how hard it is for them to readjust back into society. None of that could be easy to do, so I can only imagine coming from this town to the real world is not going to be a piece of cake. As for Donna, I can feel where she's coming from. Realize that she's been here for a couple of years. She's seen what life was like before they even had the talisman, and she had to hide from the monsters every night. It wasn't until Boyd had those talisman that life got a little bit easier for them. So imagine going from total crap to some semblance of normalcy, and then to have that kind of threatened all over again. So Donna losing the colony house is definitely a big blow to whatever hope people might have had in this place. Then, of course, now you have this tower radio thing that's potentially, building up hope all over again. And I mean, after so much misery, it is just one thing to hold on to a tiny bit of hope, but it's devastating to have your hopes raised and then dashed all over again. Back at the Matthews house, Ethan says that the drawings from Victor, they all fit together as a story. But as they go through the pictures, they do get more gruesome, and Tabitha thinks rather than trying to figure out everything, they should just go play another game instead. Look, I don't know how many times I could say this, but Ethan is the key to all of this. I mean, all these pictures on the table mean something, obviously. And he said that they can't finish the quest without finishing or knowing the story. And if we think back to what Victor had said, he said that this was all starting again, which gives me the impression here that we're dealing with some sort of cycle of events that keeps on repeating. Now, of course, if folks actually decided to pay attention to these, these drawings and, make sense of whatever story they're trying to tell, this show is probably going to end a lot sooner than later. But hey, we got to stretch this out, right? So let's continue ignoring Ethan and everything he says. Right, Tabitha? Anyway, let's take a look at some of these drawings, though. I thought one of the key images here were the spiders during what looks to be rain, I'm assuming. However, you also have what appears to be maybe a flood that could be happening. There were people laying on a roof of a house, so it's possible that a flood of some sort happened in this place in the past, and right after that, the brutal massacre happened. Then there was that image of a crystal ball as if the town were inside of one. Now, this is a bit odd because it makes me question Victor of all people. He's the one drawing this picture. So what crystal ball did Victor see that just so happened to have a representation of the town inside of it? Did Victor actually see this, or was this all a dream? I don't know, but you guys let me know, what did you make of the drawings that Victor made? Jade and Jim try to figure out how to power the radio with the batteries that they got from the cars. Jade wants to find Victor with the hope that he can decipher the symbol. Kenny comes to Donna out of concern after the suicidal resident. He insisted that they still need wood, and Donna snaps. She grabs an axe and starts chopping up wood from the floor of Colony House. She heads off to the bar until Kenny comes back to check on her again. Poor Donna. Y'all know I like Donna for real. She's like one of my favorite characters, but she's usually like so calm and collected when everybody else is losing their minds and stuff. Remember, like back in the very first episode when we first got introduced to Colony House and everybody was freaking out and everything. Donna was the only one that was like, all right, look, get the guns on them, sit them down. Let me tell you about what's going on in this town. Like, she was the cool leader that we all knew. But right now, Donna, it looked like she done reached her limit. Which is understandable. I mean, we saw her earlier looking at a picture of her sister. And again, keep in mind that she's been here for so long. But what was interesting here was what Donna ended up saying at the bar. Kenny had said that they should keep on trying to find a way back home. And Donna mentioned how at least here in the town, the monsters have the decency to show you who they are. Now, this kind of makes me wonder, like, is there more to Donna than that we have to learn about? Like, is there more to her past that she's letting on here? Because what monsters did she have to deal with back in the real world that were being fake with her? Anyway, she's definitely got a real good point here with Kenny, because if the radio does not end up working, then getting people's hopes up again could have bad consequences. In the woods, Sarah tells Boyd that he reminds her of her brother Nathan. She also shares with him Nathan's theory that if you try to leave, then something would push back. The two come across bottles hanging in a tree. Before Boyd could take one down, Sarah writhes in pain, saying that she can hear them. She collapses and has a seizure. Oh man, here we go again with Sarah having another seizure. Now, the last time we saw her have a seizure, I want to say it was back at the diner when the voices in her head told her to go kill the boy. And no, Sarah does not have worms. Now, I suppose that this means that the bottles hanging in the trees might have some sort of psychic or spiritual connection along with them. I'm not really sure, but clearly something triggered her to make her go into this type of seizure. Now, let's not forget that earlier in this episode, in Tabitha's dream, she saw a random glass bottle falling down the steps. But of course, the big question here is like, where did these bottles come from? Are they actually a bad thing because the voices in Sarah's head, they were not feeling those bottles at all? And it really makes you wonder, are the voices good or are they bad? I believe when people have seizures here, it's probably a sign that something else is at play here. But whatever that could be, you guys let me know what you think. Boyd and Sarah are inside the tent with a talisman hanging up. He managed to get a bottle down, but the only thing that was written on it was 1864. Sarah said that the voice she heard was very different, and it was from a woman. The voice screamed that she was wrong and that there are things that are worse than the monsters. The voice also mentioned to tell the message to Mr. Fish and Loaves. Suddenly, the tent is jostled around. When it finally stops, they hear a loud horn and bright light flashing before them. Whoa. Okay. So now this is where it's getting juicy. So Sarah is finally hearing a different voice from a different woman. And here's the thing. Right before that, she did say that she was told about Abby's story, but that doesn't really mean that she knew who Abby was. Sarah had only been in town for a few months, while Boyd had lost Abby like about a year or more ago. Now, the Mr. Fish and Loaves thing we learned in episode 8 was actually Boyd's nickname. That wasn't something Sarah could possibly know. So once again, these voices seem like there's more to them. Now, the first thought in my mind here was that, when people die, maybe they become ghosts and they're just trapped here. Maybe this is the purgatory thing happening all over again. I don't know. Maybe that was, Abby talking to Sarah. Maybe it was not. But let's kind of go with it as if it were Abby. If so, she said she was wrong. I think she meant that she was wrong that everyone was asleep and they're all having a nightmare. Recall that she was under the impression that by killing everyone, it would wake them up and send them home. But if this is Abby, and if she was wrong, and if she's still able to communicate with Sarah, I think that says a lot. It seems like Abby, if that's really her, can see Boyd even though she's dead. Now, how is any of that possible? That's anyone's guess, but you guys let me know what you think could be the case. Now, I think this is where we need to backtrack again and talk about Tabitha's dream that happened earlier in the episode. Now, Boyd found a bottle, right, that had the year 1864 written on it. Well, this is where I think there's a major connection going on. Of course, we know that 1864 was one of the years that was found in Tabitha's dream earlier in the episode. Also, when you think back to Jade's vision, he saw Union soldiers hanging from the trees. I think that they were hanging pretty similar to how those bottles were hanging. Could the dead bodies hanging be a representation of the bottles? Also, remember back in the dream, Jim was also hanging upside down. Could this be foreshadowing that maybe Jim is destined to die? So, thinking about this show, a lot of things obviously come to mind. And I think one of the questions that I like to ask myself, and I think a lot of you guys ask this question too, is kind of like, yo, where did all these monsters or creatures come from? You know, we ask, where do they come from? But I think that maybe this could flip the question a little bit. Maybe with all these dates, maybe we're asking the wrong question. Rather than asking where they come from, maybe we need to be asking when do they come from, you know? Could time travel actually be an element in this show? Possibly. I think that there is enough reason to believe, at least, I don't know if time travel is in there, but there's at least enough evidence to believe that there is a cycle of violence that is going on. Now, as for the whole tent thing with Boyd and Sarah, listen, at first, my very first thought was, I thought they were attacked by some monsters, from the town or whatever. But that didn't really make sense because they had the talisman up, and we already know if the talisman are up, the monsters usually just stay away. So if it wasn't the monsters, then what exactly was it? Now, I do believe that there are three possibilities of what could have happened with Sarah and Boyd in the tent. Now, for the first possibility, again, I don't think that the tent was actually attacked, but maybe they were transported or something. Now, here's the thing. We know that faraway trees are a thing, and we know that they teleport people. I thought that maybe the tent got caught up in some sort of dimensional pocket or something, and maybe we're just kind of seeing what happens when someone gets transported somewhere. Maybe it's a bumpy ride. We don't really know. Now, the second possibility is maybe Boyd and Sarah have been caught up in the forest shifting around. Recall earlier in the show when Victor was recording the movement of the trees. We have no idea what's going on with these trees, but it could be possible that Boyd and Sarah have been caught up in the movement and the shifting of the trees because they are kind of in the forest. We don't know what happens inside the forest compared to what happens on the edge of it. Now, there is a third possibility of what happened with Boyd and Sarah in the tent, and I do believe it is probably the most likely reason. However, I'm going to save that explanation for the next breakdown in episode 10, only because I think it's a kind of a bit of a spoiler, and I think it makes more sense once we get to episode 10. So make sure you tune in for the next video to hear what really happened in the tent with Boyd and Sarah. Lastly, we saw a light flashing and the sound of a horn blowing, and this is very similar to what Tabitha heard and saw in her dream as well. Now, what is making this noise and where they are is something we'll just have to wait and see in the next episode. I know for those of you that have already seen the episode and seen the season, you know what it is, but for those of you who haven't finished the season yet, it will be revealed very soon. All right, now let's dive right into episode 10. Ethan is playing with his toys, but rather than Julie telling him a story, he said that he's a big boy now and he can make up his own stories. Jade bursts into the Matthews house and shows them that he's figured out how to transfer electricity from the appliances to fix their power supply issue problem. Back in the woods, Sarah questions what dragged them in the tent. Unsure about it, Boyd goes outside the tent and sees that they are surrounded by a bunch of spider webs. Well, it looks like we actually have some hope now for this radio tower that's being built. And by the way, I think that we really need to start giving credit where it's due. It wasn't Jim that came up with this. It wasn't Jade. It was Mrs. Lou that came up with the power supply idea. So I just need folks to give her her proper credit, okay? Now, as for Boyd and Sarah, now, if you recall from my last video, I know I mentioned how there were 3 possibilities of what might have happened with Boyd and Sarah in their tent. First possibility was that maybe they got transported to a new location, similar to how the faraway trees will teleport people, right? Maybe they got moved around in some sort of dimensional pocket, maybe. Second possibility was maybe they got caught up in the movement of the trees. We already know that Victor was tracking the trees and he noticed that the trees were moving around. So I don't know, maybe the trees picked them up and carried them. I don't know. But there is a third possibility that I teased last time. And I think that this is probably far more likely of what actually happened with Boyd and Sarah in the tent. And I think it was that they simply got dragged by a giant spider. Now, if you recall in episode 9, we've seen in Victor's drawings a bunch of big spiders, right? And in the second episode, so this is episode 2, Ethan woke up talking about this dream he had, and he mentioned a big spider as well.
Because the spider came down from the ceiling.
So, and in episode 9, he mentioned big spiders again.
There's drawings of scarecrows and boogeymen, giant spiders. This is definitely a quest.
So not only that, but it seems pretty obvious that Boyd and Sarah were dragged into a spider's nest, you know, and listen, this is where all the baby spiders are probably, you know, living or whatever. And for all we know, maybe it was the big mama spider that dragged the tent, you know, for them to be food for the spider babies. But listen, if you have any other ideas of what happened to the tent, please feel free to let me know. Back at the diner, Jade and Jim share their idea with the rest of the town residents. They tell everyone that they need to find as many wires in appliances and cars as possible to help supply the power for the radio. Kenny and Christy strip the ambulance down of its wires, and Kenny talks about his dream places that he'd like to travel if they ever got to go home. He tells Christy that he'd love to take her out for a nice seafood dinner and travel to one of those places, but she reminded him that she's got a whole fiance back at home. Damn, Kenny? Ugh, I felt the pain. But you know what? I've been really conflicted with Kenny and Christy, right? Like, on one hand, Christy sure has been flirting, okay, with Kenny since this show has begun. I mean, they're doing book dates. She's kissed him and basically showed him a lot of positive signs that she liked him. But then when this scene hit, I mean, she mentioned that Kenny knew that she was engaged, right? And I was like, ugh. Now I got to look at my boy Kenny just a little bit differently. Now, I know he's a young guy, but you know what this was like? This reminded me of like when people go on vacation and you hook up with that vacation bae, you know, you guys have been chilling all week, drinking, having food together and all that. And then you realize that your flight is the very next day. So you ask your vacation bae like, yo, you want to go out on a date when we get back home? And you forget that your vacation bae has a whole spouse with 5 kids at home. So I think that, you know, both of them are at fault here. Christy for leading Kenny on, knowing all this time that while they're on this hellish vacation, she ain't about to give him no chance if they can get out of here, you know, and Kenny for being a sucker and falling for a taken woman. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there, but what do you guys think about this whole Kenny Christy situation? Ellis brings Fatima outside of Colony House to the very same spot where he first saw her. He gets down on a knee and asks her to marry him. Aw, isn't that nice? Talk about a smooth operator. He's a smooth operator. There is nothing more romantic than proposing to your girlfriend in the same place that she got trapped in a hellish pocket dimension roaming with monsters. Boyd and Sarah continue on in the woods and they start to follow the light they saw earlier. Sarah begs Boyd to turn back because of the voice she heard in her head. She mentioned the name Mr. Fish and Loaves, and Boyd confirmed that only Ellis and his dead wife would know that name.
Who's Mr. Fish and Loaves?
It's me, Mr. Fish and Loaves. It's a nickname I had back in the service. Only 2 people who would have known that name is Ellis
and your wife.
Boyd hears a woman's voice that Sarah can't hear. He thinks he sees Abby covered up in webs, but it seems like that was not the case. He steps on something and a bunch of spiders come crawling out and attack him. He gets bitten by many of the spiders.
I got it.
So first of all, ew, Ew, ugh, all these spiders crawling. Ugh. See, just watching this scene kind of gave me the creeps, made me feel like someone was crawling on me. Did not like it. But listen, maybe the voice that was talking in Sarah's head wasn't wrong. I mean, she did say it was a different voice. And we keep hearing about these spiders and we keep seeing them in the drawings and stuff. So maybe this was our first real instance of seeing them, although these did seem to be just the babies, right? And I'm curious though, did the spiders make Boyd hallucinate, or was it this place? Was it this environment that made him see, that Abby covered in webs? But better question, do you think that was the real Abby that was talking to Sarah? Or was it a ghost? Or was it this place playing tricks on her? Or is it the monsters talking to her? I don't know. I mean, the advice to turn back, it does sound helpful, but then again, maybe not. I mean, maybe these voices don't want you to keep going further in the woods because maybe you'll find a way out. Maybe they do want them to go back because there are some scary things out there. I don't know, but whatever you think about these voices, let me know in the comments down below. Sarah and Boyd continue their journey, but Boyd seems to be losing it. He mentioned that this place must be giving you hope and it must be feeding off of your pain. I mean, that could be the case.
This place makes you think that you're doing the right thing. It gives you hope, then it takes it away like it's feeding on your pain.
Colony House continues to progress and Jay needs a little pick-me-up. He goes back to Mrs. Lou's house where he sees her still mourning her late husband. He shares with her a story about his grandmother and tells her that when you lose someone, they come with you when you go. Christy meets up with Kenny and tells him that she does wish she could go back home to her fiance, but then she also admits that she would like to travel with Kenny too. Christy said she couldn't decide what she wanted to do and grabbed Kenny's hand. I really like this scene for Jade and Mrs. Lou. I mean, first of all, I loved it for Jade because it seemed like his character was finally making a shift from being less arrogant, less self-centered, and being more empathetic, And I like this relationship with Mrs. Lou because, again, it doesn't look like something that, they seem like kind of combative a little bit. Like, she was like, yo, drink your tea and, stop complaining, stop whining and, but like in a motherly sense, but like now it seems like Jade is kind of like coming around and I don't know, I feel like they're gonna have like a nice relationship, based off of this turning point. Now, as for Christy, please stop playing with this man Kenny's emotions. I'm saying is that, listen, all I'm saying is that Christy has options, okay? She got a fiance at home and she got a potential boo thing in Kenny right now. I just don't want my boy Kenny to go through any more heartbreak, okay? So don't hit him with the, I want you, but I don't, but I want my fiance. And come on now, just pick a lane. If you're gonna be with Kenny, yo, sorry fiance. If you want your fiance, stay true, or the third option, I'm gonna leave it there. The townfolk gather around to see the final construction of the radio tower. The lamp turns on and power gets going. Jim listens in and actually gets a signal, and everyone is elated.
We got power. We got a signal.
Yes!
Oh.
Tabitha leaves to finish up her digging in the basement. Suddenly, a massive storm is headed towards Colony House. Jim sends out a signal, but the storm is coming in quickly. Donna comes out to help him find a signal. The thunder and lightning starts to pick up until finally a voice can be heard on the other end of the radio. The male voice asked him if this was Jim Matthews and said that his wife shouldn't be digging that hole in the basement.
Who is this?
Your wife shouldn't be digging that hole, Jim.
Jim hurries back to his home to find Tabitha. And just when we thought we was going to have a little bit of hope and a little bit of joy, just the second some of that just popped up, the storm came in to blow all that away. And this was great, getting the signal to work. And recall, the reason why this is so important for this radio tower is because the radio waves work differently than other forms of frequency. So there was a chance that even if they were in a different dimension, even if they were somewhere else, I don't know, even if they were in outer space or whatever, that maybe this could be a call for help. Maybe somebody else could pick it up. But nope, that ain't gonna work because, of course, we got to talk about that voice.
Oh, there's someone else.
Who or what answered Jim on the other end? Now, it's important to note that Jim wasn't hallucinating here. Donna also heard that voice and she was scared, right? She was petrified. Could it have been one of the monsters? that answered him? Or could it be one of the voices that Sarah keeps hearing in her head? Well, we may not find out the identity of the voice, but I think we can think about what it said, right? The voice did know who Jim was. And this kind of reminds me of how this place, this environment, has a way of knowing things that it shouldn't know. Recall, the monster said that they knew all of their names. Remember when Trudy was getting killed in episode 7 at the Colony House massacre? It said, hey, we know all your names.
Hi, Trudy.
How do you know my name?
We know all your names.
Then recall that the voices could see what Father Khatri buried when he first arrived in Fromville, right? And then you can, I guess another thing to think about is that the voice knew what Tabitha was doing in the basement. Does this then mean that even with the talisman, this place or these entities can still see and know what's going on? And I think the crazier thing here is that it's kind of hard to say whether or not the voice is evil, because it's not like it was wrong with what it said about Tabitha digging. I mean, what do you make of this voice on the radio? Do you think it's a good thing or do you think it's a bad thing? Let me know. At the Matthews residence, Tabitha falls through a hole in the basement. She finds the end of an electric wire that does lead to nowhere. A light shines through, and behind her is none other than Victor. He said that the boy in white told him that she would come. Victor said that this is where they sleep and they make drawings here too. Jim runs to the home and sees that the hole has caved in and everything is blocked off. Yo, okay. So things are really starting to turn up here, right? So there's a lot to unpack here. First off, we still don't know how the electricity works here because that cable just was not connected to anything, right? So how is power being supplied to this house, or to the town in general? Where does the electricity actually come from? Then you have Victor. Oh my goodness. So more than likely, this is where Victor ended up after the whole Colony House massacre. Remember, he jumped into the faraway tree right after Julie, and while she made it out to safety, but it seems like, he was in those tunnels all this time. Now, why was he in the tunnels? Well, if we believe what Ethan said earlier, it seems as though Victor is just playing his role in this quest.
This is definitely a quest.
As for the tunnels, we definitely have to talk about a couple things. One, Victor said that this is where they sleep. So I think we can presume that this is where the monsters sleep during the day. The fact that they have tunnels going even under the houses like this, that's probably got to be even scarier to think about. I mean, the other thing to consider besides that is this might explain one of Victor's drawings that we saw in episode 9. We saw the image of the snow globe that there seemed to be tunnels underneath the town. So now I'm starting to wonder, is this really Victor's first time being down in the tunnels? Then, of course, we have to talk about this cave drawing. Victor said that the monsters like to draw too. That image on the wall, I think it seems to have a lot going on. I mean, maybe if I have the time of day, I'll try to dissect what's going on here in a separate video. But I'll just say the main things that stand out to me is that there are two different types of people in this drawing. There are red people and white people. So we have to figure out what that means. And this seems to be retelling of an event back in time, or probably, as Ethan would say, this was a story, right? And I'm sure when or if we can figure out this story, we'll be able to finally figure out what is actually going on in Fromville. But you guys let me know, what do you think about the drawing on the wall? What do you think some of the symbols mean? What is the story that is being told? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments. Back in the woods, Boyd's wounds are slowing him down and the storm is starting to pick up. They can hear the loud horn and see a lighthouse in the distance. The boy in white appears to Sarah and talks to her telepathically. He confirmed to her that her brother Nathan's theory about this place was actually correct. This place is angry. He directs them to a faraway tree for safety. Boyd goes in and he finds himself trapped in some sort of tight space. Back in town, the radio randomly turns on and in pulls up a huge bus full of people. Okay, there's a lot to talk about here. That is for sure. First off, this place has feelings? It can get angry? I mean, okay, back in episode 9, Sarah told Boyd about her brother Nathan's theory, and he basically thought that if you try to leave or if you try to push too hard against this place, something would push back.
Nathan had a theory about this place. If we tried to leave, If we push too hard, then something would push back.
Right? And it seems like we've had, or at least seen evidence of this theory being true, because the moment they started building up the tower, the moment they figured out the power supply issue, which probably is considered as pushing too hard to leave, that's when the storm wants to show up and obviously threaten what they're doing, right? So I do think that the storm is probably this place's form of punishment for the people trying to get out. Now, who knows what else this place is capable of doing, because obviously it can control the weather, and it's possible that it can control much more than that. Next, we've got to talk about the boy in white. So it seems as though he's chosen yet another person to reveal himself to, and that is Sarah. And we finally actually hear what his voice sounds like.
You have to get inside. Over there. You'll be safe in there.
Now, just like the case with Victor and Julie during the Colony House massacre, we see that the boy in white is actually helping them by pointing them towards safety. Now, I know some people believe that, the boy in white is evil, but listen, right now, I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing him saving Victor and Julie from, danger. I'm seeing him save Boyd and Sarah. Well, at least we're assuming that he's saving Boyd and Sarah. So far, the boy in white is good with me, so far. Now, as for Boyd, he's clearly found himself in a very tight spot. Now, I mean, as we know, the faraway trees, they are unpredictable. They can send you almost anywhere. Maybe it's a good place, maybe it's a bad place. We don't really know. But will Boyd find help, or can he make his way out of this? I mean, this is obviously going to be something that we're going to have to look forward to in the next season. Finally, we end off with this radio randomly playing, and in comes this big old bus. Yo, if things were not bad enough, if it wasn't bad enough to have people randomly coming in, now you got a bus full of people? Yo, it was hard enough to get some people to kind of understand what was going on, how to cope. I mean, we saw how difficult that was with like just 3-4 people, but dealing with a whole bus full of people, and we're assuming that this is full of people here, but this seems like it's going to come with far more issues, that the townsfolk are going to have to deal with. But I guess you'll have to just wait and see how that unfolds next season. Okay, well, that was it for this season. Guys, please be sure to subscribe to this channel, and please ring that bell. Click the bell so you can get the notifications, because I've got some compelling theories for you. I have some interviews with the cast that you do not want to miss, and I will be breaking down every single episode in the next season. I'm telling you, we're going to have us a good old time. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. If you're new here and you like what you see, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell so you don't miss out the next time I drop a video. I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all, and until next time, I'll see you all later.